Okay. All right, thank you very much. Welcome members of council and administration, and certainly our delegations that are here today, as well as those who are watching from the comforts of home. Welcome to our meeting this evening. So I'll call the meeting to order and roll call. All members of council are present. We did have a closed meeting today. An electronic in-camera meeting was held earlier this afternoon at 5:35. Under section 239(2)(e) and F of the Municipal Act 2001, which permits a meeting, part of a meeting to be closed to the public when the subject matter being considered is litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. And advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. At the meeting, council received legal advice regarding notification of potential litigation regarding the Riverside Trail and defamation comments on social media towards administration and council. So members of council, do we have any disclosure of pecuniary interest on the agenda as presented to you this evening? None disclosed. If you do find yourself at any given time in pecuniary interest or conflict of interest, please address myself and we'll deal with it at the moment. We have, move on to minutes. We have the regular council meeting of June 8th. We had the public council meeting June 8th as well on the Sear Drain. Public council meeting June 8th, the South Talbot Drain, and a special council meeting June 8th, the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan Update. If I can have a motion on those minutes. Moved by Deputy Mayor Bichetti, supported by Councilor Houston. On those minutes, any errors or omissions? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Also, I need a motion on the June 22nd, 2021 minutes, and that was a regular council meeting on the June 22nd minutes of the public council meeting. Oh, I think we've done all that. I got it. It's okay. I got a double. Supplementary agenda adoption. Yes, we do need that the supplementary items added to the regular council meeting agenda regarding the communications for information items on the Bride development and Riverside Trail. The revised PowerPoint presentation entitled Riverside Multi-Use Trail from City of Windsor to Manning Road be approved. Councilor Dowie, Councilor Altenhoff. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Thank you. All right, our first item on delegations. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Gordon Orr, our Chief Executive Officer, Lynette Bain, Vice President, Destination Development, and Jason Toner, Director of Marketing Communications from our Tourism Windsor, Pelee Island. Welcome.
Thank you very much. And good evening, Your Worship, Mayor McNamara, and members, of course, of Tecumseh Town Council. It's indeed our pleasure to be here tonight. As the mayor suggested, I'm here with Lynette and Jason, and we're here with the latest edition of our 2021-2022 Visitor Guide, which is just released. And we have a brief PowerPoint and video presentation for you as well. And we'll talk a little bit about our areas of focus for 2021. This is the last of 9 council presentations we're doing. So we did save the best for last. We've been across the region, of course. June is Tourism Month, and we make it an effort to come out to all of our municipal and town council meeting. And we do this for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's part of our commitment to you, to make sure our elected officials are better informed about the work of our organization and our activities designed and derived during the pandemic. And secondly, we want to give you an opportunity to answer any questions that you may have from us in this forum. And before we start the PowerPoint presentation, I don't have to remind council that tourism and hospitality was hit first, hit the hardest, and will take the longest to recover. The losses and sacrifices businesses have experienced and endured are real, and they are heartbreaking. But there are better days ahead. As the vaccination rollout continues to give those much needed shots in the arms and the province's three-step roadmap to recovery unfolds, we're becoming more relieved and more hopeful. I've said it a number of times. We can hope for better days ahead, but we have to plan for better days ahead so those days are more hopeful. And that's what we've been doing here at Tourism Windsor Essex Pelee Island, planning in concert with you, our tourism partners and stakeholders, so that we're ready to go as the provincial framework allows. And if I could have the next slide, please. Our mission: we are the leading tourism industry collaborative committed to enhancing the region's economy and quality of life. And you can see there 3 bullets: supporting industry development and the operators, actively engaging with our partners, and effectively marketing our organization. Slide, please. Our organization was recently awarded official designation for Destinations International called Destination Marketing Accreditation Program, also known as DMAP. Tourism Windsor Essex Pelee Island is complying with the highest and the best standards of destination marketing and management, meeting the industry standard for performance and accountability for destination organizations from around the world. And as part of DMAP, we're now part of an elite group of 225 destination marketing organizations globally that have met the rigorous standards of industry accreditation. In Canada, 19 DMOs are accredited, with Tourism Windsor Essex Pelee Island being only one of 4 in the province of Ontario. Slide, please. There you can see our organizational structure. We have a team of 9. And the next slide, please. And there you can see our organizational governance, an 11-member board, a mix of politicians and stakeholders. And you can see on our executive that Mayor Santos from Kingsville is our chair, and County Council is also ably represented by directors, Deputy Mayor Krista Malosh, and on the county level, it's also your mayor, of course, Mayor Gary McNamara. And I do want to take this opportunity to thank Mayor McNamara for his active engagement, in particular this past year with us. Having an educated, reasoned voice at the board table has meant a great deal to us. And of course, his grander scope in representing the county, he always does so with such a positive attitude. Thank you very much. Slide, please. When we look back at the last 15 months, we do have to recognize what we accomplished together within a united visitor industry, because the resiliency of this industry has been nothing short of a miracle. Our organization shifted focus immediately at the onset of the pandemic and paused all marketing. Slide, please. Becoming an all-important resource hub for the industry we serve. By providing ongoing, timely information through our online COVID hub, it has and still is a critical resource for our stakeholders. Another key facet in 2020 was to pivot our marketing to align with the direction of our tourism partners, and this led us to embrace our communities and businesses with, slide please, hashtag Takeout Tuesday, our takeout and delivery guide, hashtag Wine Order Wednesday, our winery delivery guide, hashtag Fill Up Friday, our brewery delivery guide, and also we complement it with our patio dining guide. And the last highlight, slide please, from 2020 that I'd like to focus in on is at a time when we needed it the most, we kept positivity at the forefront through our YQG Stand Strong social media campaign. This campaign was critical in helping cultivate a sense of community pride and promoting good news stories and photos during some of our darkest days. And that pride continued, slide please, as we unveiled our 6th annual Best of Windsor Essex Award, social media campaign designed to have locals help identify their favorites, knowing that where locals like to go, so will the visitors. This campaign continues to grow and saw an 11% increase year over year in votes. Slide, please. Our 2021 Destination Development and Marketing Strategy is available on our partner portal and continues to address initiatives to showcase our areas of focus. Slide, please. And they are outdoor adventure, food and drink, entertainment, and arts and culture. I'd now like to turn the presentation over to our Vice President of Destination Development, Lynette Bain. Lynette, please.
Thank you, Gordon. New and enhanced product and program development initiatives that we have been working on to grow the capacity of the local tourism industry and our stakeholders include a new digital tasting pass for the Epic Wine Growers Association, a new barrels, bottles, and brews digital flight log, and an enhanced We Made It program that aligns our We Made It partners with our special occasion guides that encourage more sales opportunities. One of our latest initiatives is, slide please, known as Shopping List and Windsor Pizza Club. Each of these programs bring together small business operators to celebrate the Italian culture, food, and traditions in Windsor. The Pizza Club is designed to embrace the heritage and uniqueness of Windsor-style pizza, and in turn encourage locals and visitors alike to visit the 8 participating partners. Slide, please. The unique Nona shopping list program highlights Nona-approved food, beverages, and retail selections, all through a digital pass that is gamified and rewards shoppers for visiting businesses. The legacy of this culture has been brought to life by this jaw-dropping mural by Dirks on Erie Street, depicting the love of a Nona for her family, overlaid by her ties to Italy and her new life in Canada. Another program we launched this month, next slide please, is We Heart Local, focusing on the farm fresh in Windsor, Essex, your guide to local producers, growers, roadside stands, farmers markets, craft beverages, and farm-to-table dining, all through a new digital pass that encourages exploration of over 70 participants in the campaign. To encourage participation in these programs, we know that building consumer confidence towards feeling safe, next slide please, is key, and that is why we have embraced the Safe Travels designation. This Safe Travel stamp is certified by the World Travel and Tourism Council. The stamp, or decal, allows travelers to recognize companies that have adapted to health and hygiene protocols, so they can be comforted to know that these businesses take safe travel seriously. We have 124 businesses who have received this designation in Windsor, Essex, with 8 businesses currently in the town of Tecumseh. Intake continues, and we encourage more businesses to follow suit. And speaking of safe travels, arguably, there is no safer place currently than in some of our outdoor adventures, including, next slide, please, our regional birding guide. It highlights how to be a backyard birder, how to build backyard habitats, identifying different species, and it also includes a map of the primary birding sites in Windsor, Essex. You'll see the Windsor Essex fishing guide here that's packed with some of the best places to fish, where to grab your bait and reel, and what species are found right here in Windsor, Essex. I'd now like to turn over the presentation to Jason.
Thank you, Lynette. Next slide, please. Like last year, this year will be the year of the staycation, with people staying close to home. Our Summer of the Staycation campaign is hyper-local and will make it easy for locals to learn more about things to do in their own backyard with easily downloadable itineraries, buyable experiences, and more. Next slide, please. In tandem, we'll also be launching the Windsor Essex Road Trip, a campaign that will be encouraging those across Southern Ontario to plan a road trip to a region for 2+ nights. Both campaigns will run through the fall to help drive traffic to our attractions and hotels. COVID-19 has also impacted how people are consuming media, and we've adapted. Next slide, please. You'll notice when you receive a copy of this year's official visitor guide is actually branded a staycation guide for Windsor, Essex, Pelee Island. This will be a great asset for locals and visitors to pick up in market. We'll have a fully digital guide distributed out of market by a third-party agency to target those that will have the highest propensity to travel to Windsor, Essex this summer and fall. This entire campaign will be part of our Windsor Hotel incentive campaign. Next slide, please. A campaign designed to help drive overnight visitation. When visiting guests book a minimum of 2 nights in a Windsor hotel, they'll have the opportunity to receive a gift card and a Pizza Club voucher. A similar campaign will run with hotels in Leamington, Kingsville, and Lakeshore. This campaign should help encourage additional room bookings and also encourage visitors to explore new offerings and districts while they're here. Slide, please. 2 programs we partnered with the Windsor Essex Chamber of Commerce on last year that have legacy pieces through this summer include Shop YQG and Dine YQG, both designed to help promote local at the time when it was needed the most and to continue through. Slide, please. Our website continues to be the most important marketing tool, and we've added new enhancements and features this year, including, slide, please, integration of a hotel booking widget, integration of a hotel accommodation package booking widget, integration of restaurant menus, as well as featured areas for new content. I'd like to hand the presentation back over to Gordon.
Thanks very much, Jason. Slide, please. There you go. That's the team. That's the team of dedicated tourism professionals I have the privilege to work with every day. And an important part of that team, of course, is our Regional Tourism Committee. And your representative from the town of Tecumseh is Leslie Reeves, your manager of strategic initiatives. And she is a great collaborative partner, and we appreciate her active engagement. I'd also like to give a shout out to another couple of your administrative team, Paul Anthony and Sean Firth, who we have regular interaction with, and they're both a pleasure to work with as well. But most of all, Council, we'd like to thank you. Slide please. We'd like to thank you for your time this evening, and more importantly, for continuing to invest in tourism and your support, of course, of Tourism Windsor Essex Peely Island. We'd now like to conclude by playing our new 30-second regional video, and then we'll be available for any questions you may have. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, thank you very much, Gord and Lynette and Jason. And when you mentioned a hotel in Lakeshore, you could add Lakeshore to Tecumseh because it's a stone throw from us, actually. But I want to take certainly the opportunity to thank, a very small team, but a very strong team. And attending the meetings and listening to some of the board members that are business people within the community and listening to the business community, we know it's been tough slugging. But I got to say, Gord and the team, you've done tremendous work in promoting our community. The staycation piece and so forth. I can tell you, I found some really secret little spots that I didn't even think that, thought they existed and so forth within our own community and the whole promotion of the region. But you've been also continuing to sell and build on the outside world that the deep Southwest Ontario, it is a great place to visit. And there's a lot of things to do. So I want to certainly compliment the team for basically maintaining and striving and building confidence in the retail and certainly the service industry, which has really suffered. To keep the hope up and all the various programs, and then you alluded to many of them that were here, and also the accolades and the awards that have been that you brought home. It seems that every year it's we get 2 or 3 recognitions within the industry, and that's sending a message that when the doors finally open, I hope that our retail and certainly that the hospitality industry will be ready for them.
Thank you very much.
Great work. Again, it's a pleasure to be amongst that particular board, and I know they're very engaged, and so is the administrative team, doing a great job. So I'll open it up. Any questions, members of council? Yes, Councilor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you to Gord, Lynette, and Jason for being here. I was delighted. I think it was just over a week ago in my mailbox was your the 2021 guide, and it's always a delight to open that up and just look at where I'd like to try out next. That's close to home. Very much. I see Councillor Houston just showed it, and certainly your organization does us very proud. I want to thank you so much for the hard work that you put into making us look so great. And certainly I hear it from my friends at Destination Ontario, how much they appreciate your contributions, and they recognize what a phenomenal job that Tourism Windsor Essex Peely Island is undertaking on our behalf. So just want to say thank you for all that you're doing to help develop our economy and help bring people here. and show what a great place our region is.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor. Through you to the councillor. First of all, Mayor, I'd like to thank you for your generous comments, and we love having you on the tourism board as well. And to you, Councillor Dowie, first of all, congratulations on your appointment to Destinations Ontario. It's great to have you at that provincial level, making sure that Windsor, Essex, and Tecumseh is recognized the way we should be. And thank you very much for your compliments. It truly is a team effort. I mean, we're the three that come and speak to you, but there's a team of 6 behind us, and it's a very talented team that I have with Lynette, Jason, and the entire staff. So I will make sure that I share these comments with them. Thank you very much.
Okay, any further questions or certainly comments? Well, I can't wait till we meet in person again, and then we can hit the brews and crews and so forth, and hoist the glass and celebrate what's ahead of us, not what's behind us.
Right.
And so looking forward for that.
First round's on us.
That's even better. Thank you very much. And to the members, if I could have a motion to receive the video from Tourism Windsor, Essex, Pelee Island. Councillor Dowie and Councillor Houston, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. And next year we'll meet in person.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Good night. All right, our second delegation this evening, members of council, is Mr. Paul Bezaire, Bezaire Partners, Urban Planners, Landscape Architects, and Andrea Winter, professional engineer, PC partner with Dillon Consulting Limited. And welcome. Now, Mr. Bartnick, if there's anything you'd want to premise here.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you very much. I also wanted to introduce Paul Bezaire and Andrea Winters, and Council may remember them from the April 8th special council meeting on the topic of the Riverside Drive Trail. I also wanted to take perhaps a brief moment and provide just a cursory overview of the report that is also on the agenda tonight on the same topic. It would be Public Works report number 29. So our administrative report does identify that we do try to develop and expand the town's active transportation facilities, which has been supported by council to achieve a desirable and sustainable community that promotes healthy lifestyles. The installation of the Riverside Drive Trail from the Tecumseh-Windsor border to Manning Road has been identified and recommended in a number of prior council adopted and approved plans and studies. They are listed in the report. I won't go into too much depth. However, it does include the 2010 Parks and Recreation Master Plan, the 2012 CWATS study as amended in 2016, the 2017 Tecumseh Transportation Master Plan, as well as the 2021 Town of Tecumseh New Official Plan. So at the April 8th special council meeting, the town's consultants did present a detailed review and analysis and recommended the detailed design of an off-road multi-use trail along Riverside Drive. As recommended in the previous administrative report at that time, we did have an additional 30-day public consultation period that was held pretty much over April and May of this year. During that time, there were plenty of comments received. We had about 171 comments received on the PlaySpeak platform, and that was from 63 members of the public. We also received 18 email correspondence from 16 members of the public. To date, there has been extensive public consultation on this project, which includes 2 public information centers held in 2017 and 2018, a presentation to the town's Accessibility Advisory Committee, The April 8th special council meeting, which I discussed, which also included an administrative report and a presentation to council, as well as the 30-day public consultation period that just took place on PlaceSpeak. So to date, the total project costs up to June 1st actually are in excess of $100,000 that have been spent on the project. But they obviously reflect those efforts and the comprehensive and thorough consideration of the public input into this project. So we had taken those comments that we did receive during the 30-day public review period, and the consultants have reviewed them and provided a recommendation letter, which is appended to the report as attachment number 2. And the consultants are here tonight to present the contents of their recommendation, as well as to answer any questions that council may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Bartnick. All right, I don't know who's going to take the lead, Paul or Andrea? Go ahead, Andrea.
I drew the short straw, I guess. So, good evening. Thank you to them. Oh, we'll just wait. We'll pull the presentation up. Okay. Good evening. Thank you to the members of council for the opportunity to present an updated report related to the technical recommendations for the Riverside multi-use trail. Our goal with respect to the presentation this evening is to provide some additional context, clarity, and updates related to input received via the correspondence with administration, council members, and through the online forum following our previous presentation. Next slide. As you're aware, the project for discussion tonight started with the project startup in 2017. Since the start of the project in 2017, we have held 2 public information centers and thoroughly reviewed the potential solutions for the requested cycling facility. Earlier this spring, Paul Bazare and I presented an updated set of recommendations and a thorough overview related to that recommendation. During the month of May, we reviewed the comments received through the public review period, and during the presentation tonight, we would like to provide an update related to the themes for discussion raised since April. The information we are providing is intended to provide additional detail to allow council to make an informed decision to the potential of a facility being constructed in this part of the town of Tecumseh. Next slide. Throughout the comment period, it was evident that residents are concerned with respect to the safety of the pathway proposed. Please note that I am going to refer to the proposed infrastructure as a pathway versus a trail, as it is located within the road right-of-way and is subject to the guidelines of Book 18, versus TAC manuals for trails, which are located outside of road right-of-ways, such as through parks, hydro easements, etc. Comments through the comment period were similar in nature to those received leading up to the previous public meeting, with some which we would like to discuss further in detail tonight, including safety, property impacts, environmental impacts, and alternative facility types. Next slide. We acknowledge that concerns have been raised with respect to the pathway safety at the Manning Road Roundabout crossing. The town is intending to install pedestrian crossovers, PXOs, as part of the design and construction of the Manning Road Phase 3 project. This installation will incorporate the needs of the pathway connection. Similar guidelines to that of the pathway facility will be utilized to develop the design for the PXO according to OTM Book 15. There may be signage and flashing lights as part of this design to address safety for pedestrians and cyclists alike. In particular, sightlines for landowners were also raised as concern. Through our assessment of the options, we have reviewed the guidelines as well as completed consultation with other senior designers within our company, and we agree that the higher speed traffic on the road is a higher risk to safety than that of the lower volume, speed, and frequency of traffic entering or exiting a single property. Conflicts at high access points can be mitigated through removal of relocation of obstacles where reasonable, or the addition of signage and pavement markings. It is noted that the private access sightlines vary throughout the project area. and they are also expected to have lower speed traffic and lower frequency of conflict to that of the Riverside Drive traffic. Next slide. We acknowledge that specific requests related to current cycling safety was requested of us. The town reached out to the OPP and we received the following data. Within Riverside Drive, through a 10-year period extending from 2008 until 2018, one cyclist collision and one pedestrian collision were recorded. The data provided did not outline the circumstances surrounding the collisions, and no fatalities were recorded. In addition to that data, the collision history for the entire town indicates through the most recent period, 2019 to 2021, a total of 2 collisions townwide have occurred. Based upon the collision reports received, the area is not considered a high risk for cyclist or pedestrian collisions for the current users. Next slide. Through the comment period, we understand that residents continue to express concerns with respect to their property impacts. Through review of the preliminary pathway alignment, a single property has been identified as presenting potential impacts. The property is located at the southwest corner of Lesbronce Road and Riverside Drive. It will require further review and confirmation of legal property boundaries, as the lineage showing currently on the drawings is from the GIS town mapping. Existing legal property boundaries throughout the project area will also be confirmed through detailed design, and the pathway is expected to be located within the town's right-of-way limits. Next slide. Further to the previous presentation, we acknowledge that there is a potential to impact trees and landscaping within the town's right-of-way limits in order to present a reasonable alignment with separation from conflicts and to maintain sightlines at intersections. We note that some of the existing trees have already undergone significant trimming and branch removal previously, and thus already have reduced the overall tree canopy in the area. Questions have been received from the public related to why an environmental assessment was not completed for this project. This project has been identified as a Schedule A+, and thus an environmental assessment report, notice of completion, etc., was not required. In general, a Schedule A' project are limited in scale and have minimal adverse environmental effects on the natural environment and matters of provincial importance. These projects are therefore exempt from the requirements of the EA Act. The existing roadway is considered as a semi-urban cross-section, and thus existing drainage is partially controlled through the non-paved portions of the right-of-way. The detailed design for the pathway would have to include evaluation of existing and future drainage as affected by the installation of the pathway. It is noted, however, that the increased hard surface area is considered negligible in the context of the overall drainage boundaries for the area. Next slide. As was requested through the correspondence from council and the public, the design team has considered additional alternative facility types. Overall, the design of the facility for this area has focused on a facility which will be accessible for all ages and abilities, who account for over 50% of the population. We note that some highly confident users would utilize any facility that could be selected. The installation of a combined bike lane and sidewalk would provide a facility for pedestrians and confident cyclists. However, it does not provide a facility suitable for all ages and abilities in accordance with the guidelines presented in OTM Book 18. It should be noted that if a bike lane and a sidewalk were constructed, the sidewalk would be located in a very similar alignment to that of the proposed multi-use pathway based upon required separations and obstructions. The sidewalk would provide approximately 1.5 to 1.8 meters of impermeable surface in addition to the cycling lanes, and thus the overall impermeable surface would be similar in nature to that of the proposed pathway, but would be suitable for reduced user types in accordance with OTM Book 18. Please note that this type of facility is not consistent with our adjacent trails and would require cyclists to cross Riverside Drive to access the adjacent facilities, and therefore we would have to design those crossings. Installation of bike lanes would also require significant redesign for the L'Esperance and Riverside intersection, as we have noted that there is reduced property in that area. Next slide. We also looked at County Road 2, or Old Tecumseh Road. Similar to the previous slide, we acknowledge that the solution which has been developed for County Road 2 also does not provide a solution which is consistent with the adjacent facilities or provide an option that is suitable for all ages and abilities. Based upon the existing speed and volume of traffic along Riverside Drive, OTM Book 18 guidelines recommend a separated facility versus one adjacent to the existing road. Cyclists would be required to cross Riverside Drive for this facility type as well. Next slide. In summary, we thank the public for their comments, their input, and the scenarios for consideration related to this project. We took a thorough review of the various perspectives as well as design criteria within the context of this specific location. We recommend proceeding forward with the multi-use pathway along the south side of Riverside Drive, as we had indicated in the April meeting. Comments received have not led our preliminary design team to change our recommendation overall for this project. Next slide. Therefore, our overall recommendation is to consider a 2.4 to 3 meter varying width off-road multi-use pathway along the south side of Riverside Drive. This facility would be a cycling and pedestrian facility, which would meet the needs of the intended users, all ages and abilities, and it would promote equity and inclusiveness within the town's active transportation network. Secondly, it would improve our pedestrian and cycling connectivity between the adjacent facilities, the Ganacho Trail and Lakewood Park. Finally, it would provide a physical separation between motorists and pedestrians or cyclists, increasing the safety and comfort for all users. Next slide. Overall, as presented, the proposed facility will require detailed analysis of property lines, utilities, and local conflicts to present an optimal detailed design for tender. Although we acknowledge that the information presented this evening has been created with a detailed engineering analysis, should council decide to move forward with the recommendation for a multi-use pathway, the detailed engineering would begin. This detailed engineering includes the need to confirm our legal boundaries by an Ontario land surveyor, carry forward our initial feasibility level designs for final detailed design pathway alignment, grading construction, and full construction ready drawings. Consultation with utility companies in detail beyond that was completed at the preliminary stage related to potential relocations for infrastructure, and additional select landowner discussions as would be applicable. The tendering and construction would follow the completion of the detailed design. Next slide. We thank you for your time, and at this time, both Paul and I are available for any further questions or clarifications related to the presentation tonight and our associated report. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Winter. And we'll certainly open it up for questions or comments. Councillor Dowie, Councillor Aldenhall.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you to Ms. Winter and Mr. Bezier for being here tonight. I just want to. I've got a couple technical type questions. I know we're speaking more of the conceptual tonight, but I know one area that I've struggled with on this question has been this Book 18 question about what What's the most desirable outcome for facility selection? In Ontario, a number of municipalities have passed their own guidelines, some of which have been cited by some of the concerned residents and others that I found on my own, that really point out that the multi-use trail concept immersed with a number of driveways is not seen to be a desirable outcome. I believe you addressed in your presentation that it is still, because of the low use of the driveways, it is not seen to be of high risk. But I was hoping that you might be able to explore a little bit, and I believe you also mentioned it at the last meeting, but I think it's worth reinforcing just for my own benefit, how the changes to Book 18 have evolved on the design philosophy that are more supportive of this type of design versus the Book 18 of past. And then I have a follow-up question after that, but I'm hoping you could start with that one.
Okay, through your worship to council. One of the key changes with the proposed Book 18 is truly related to all types of cyclists. So really this all ages and abilities. The original Book 18, which was 2013, which a lot of the guidelines that you refer to were based upon, really focused on the cyclist. And the new updated book is really focusing on all different types of cyclists, not just the avid cyclist. And therefore, that's why the heuristics change slightly when we look at the updated guidelines. And it's really trying to promote separation from conflict points. And that is the main reason that we are looking at the road being a higher safety risk. And because we are actually, the driveways we're talking about as well are residential primarily, they would have a lot less frequent users versus if we were crossing, say, an industrial entrance type of facility that would have frequent larger vehicle traffic, etc. There could be some differences in that situation. But for residential driveways, we're looking at a few access and egress per day versus the road, which has the thousands of vehicles as per the current traffic counts.
Thank you. So my first follow-up question is related to the alignment proposed. So I know a lot of the concerns expressed have been the entry and exit from the trail, the visibility of those that are on it, and ultimately the consumption of property that has otherwise been enjoyed and maintained by the residents. So with that, I was hoping to explore a little bit as to the risk levels inherent with an alignment that might be more in line with, say, our sidewalk or closer to the road, or how attached the success of the project is to the alignment that has been put forward as part of the most recent proposals.
Through your worship to
Yep.
Councillor Dowie. So the one thing we have to remember is that we do have obstructions adjacent to the road. So initially there are areas with poles, etc., that we do want to separate from. So we definitely want to provide a normal separation from obstructions, the same as we do for other designs. As far as how set are we on the exact alignment in the preliminary design, our preliminary design really focuses on trying to provide the maximum separation, but also the maximum width of trail. So we have to keep it away from the road, away from those poles type of obstructions, and over towards the property lines. But we also would look at, we don't want to adversely affect that drainage onto the properties. So through the detailed design, there may be some alignment adjustments because we do really want to look at drainage and the overall drainage of the full cross section of that side of the road. So there is a potential for some adjustments. There's also, as I said, we have to check all those full legal property boundaries. We want to keep this pathway on the road right of way. So we are not intending, as much as landowners may feel that we are encroaching on their property, we are trying to keep it within the road right of way, because we do believe there is room for this path along the road right of way. Does that help?
I believe it does. I think it'll pivot me to a later question to our administration on that. But I guess on my final question would be related to the ongoing comparison for the north and the south side. I know Mr. Becerra is well acquainted with that. And I know one frequent comment that I've received has been whether there's been just an ask for what the financial impact is for reorganizing the north concept based on the cost on the south side was updated, but not the cost on the north side. So to understand what that alternative cost is it a simple inflation factor, or is there a more substantial review that's necessary to understand what that cost is and whether there's value to that cost, should council go down that road?
Yeah, I can help with that. It's primarily an inflation factor. We haven't, for the most part, added units, so we haven't added the number of catch basins or the length of pathways. So it's mostly an inflationary factor that you come into play. However, I should caution that the cost of putting it on the north side versus the south side is by no means the determining factor. The difficulties, I came into this project thinking it was going to go on the north side, quite frankly. That was my, sort of predilection coming into it. But after we looked at it and analyzed it, we very quickly come to the conclusion that the south side was the better side. A couple of the reasons for that. One is the fact that the trail on the north side would be right against the property line. And because of that, if you can't do anything to vary the grade, because we're at the property line, you don't want to raise the grade of the neighboring property. So that really constrains what you can do with the trail from a drainage point of view. Secondly, was an issue of safety. As you would be riding along the trail on the north side, there are a whole series of garages, fences, and hedges that would be immediately beside the pathway. And they would be a substantial blockage for views of the rider going along the trail from cars backing out of the driveways. So as much of a case has been made about the driveways on the south side, the driveways on the north side are worse because of the blockages of hedges and fences. Thirdly, there was more encumbrances on the north side in terms of trees and that sort of thing. And one of the major items was fire hydrants that would have to be relocated as part of the construction. And so that was a major factor as well. But really it come down to technical issues such as drainage and safety issues because of the view blockages that dissuaded us from going to the north side. It wasn't primarily a financial decision.
Thank you very much. And those are my questions for the team, and I will have for administration later on.
Okay, any further questions or comments? Yes, Councillor Altenhoff.
Thank you, Worship. And through you to both Ms. Winter and Mr. Becerra, thank you very much for the presentation and the details. It certainly is appreciated. I just want to follow up kind of on the last comment or answer that Mr. Becerra provided, though. I mean, we have to acknowledge that there's an existing sidewalk on the north side of Riverside Drive where people walk, people run, people ride their bike, and the history shows there's very little safety issues. So I first off, I want to note that one point. Certainly shifting everything to the south side is going to require a bit of a change of thought for everyone on that south side. I would say those individuals perhaps on the north are a bit acute to what's going on, but I don't know if that point raised is certainly warrants that. The other thing too is, and I've spoken with Mr. Bartnick about this, the OTM Book 18, again, it's a guide. It doesn't provide, it's not I'll call it a Bible. It doesn't mean we have to follow it to a T. And I think we can use as an example, because you pulled it out, what they did in Lakeshore. Lakeshore has a pedestrian as well as then a cycling, and then a series of roadways, and then another cycling lanes. And that distance that you've referred to, the buffer zone, I don't believe it was implemented within the Lakeshore project. But from my experience, because to be honest with you, I was out cycling yesterday. I've been cycling quite a bit because of COVID. It's given me a great opportunity. And I will be quite honest with you, once I hit Lakeshore, it's a breath of fresh air. I drive along the Riverside Drive Trail, and I will be honest with you, I'm constantly looking over my shoulder. Excuse me, I drive on the Riverside Drive as a road cyclist. Now I'm moving at speeds on the order of about 28 to perhaps 35 kilometers per hour. I can't be on a sidewalk. I've got to be on the road. I'm constantly looking over my shoulder. I will admit that over my years of use, and it's been quite significant because in my younger years, I was a triathlete. So it's about 25 years. I will indicate to you that I've had brushes ups with vehicles and a lot of close calls. So although we really see a very safe environment, I think we could do better because the numbers may be a little bit distracted there. So again, that book 18 is a guide, and I think we should certainly try our best to follow it, but we can see in implementations that's not happening. I would like to articulate the point, and please, more of a comment to you. I will have some questions, but look what was done in Windsor from Little River Bridge westward. There was the implementation of on-road cycling lanes, and I would be willing to bet that the traffic amount there would probably be more consistent to what we would be experiencing than potentially what Lakeshore. So again, it's a guide. Is it what's the best? I don't know. A couple questions though that I have for you. How much in the current proposed implementation of developing on the south side, how much green space? Just a quick estimate. A 1 acre, a football field. How much green space would we lose? Has that estimate been done?
We know how much, we know how many square feet the trail is, and I don't have the number. Maybe Andrea has it. I don't have the number in my head, but we certainly have that number. Is it significant? Well, when they did the comparison for the area being paved to the drainage area of the district, it was found to be very insignificant. So I don't think it would be a significant loss of green space. In response to your question, your earlier remark about the sidewalk on the north side being present there, we would not encourage nor would we advocate the use of that sidewalk for bikes, and we know it happens, obviously, but we would not design a facility with that amount of blockage of sight for the use of bikes, because it would be just a dangerous thing to do. So we certainly wouldn't advocate that. The sidewalk on the north side is another key issue for putting the trail on the south side, quite frankly, because the opportunity to have pedestrian linkages on both the north and south sides of that drive, which is very difficult to cross because of traffic. The ability to be able to move up and down the south side and the north side of the road for pedestrians is a real advantage, and so that's one of the reasons why we like to see it on the south.
Okay, no, I appreciate that, and one comment certainly, and I'd like you to confirm this. To the best of my knowledge, we don't want to mix pedestrians and cyclists, and I would appreciate if you could confirm this. To my understanding, that Book 18, again, a guideline, generally says try to avoid that. In my experience, again, it's best for us to kind of separate the pedestrians, walkers, those running, anyone using any form of perhaps a motorized scooter or anything. We wish to kind of keep them separate from the cyclists, even if they are traveling below, 20 kilometers per hour. Is that the case with the guidelines provided in Book 18?
I'll defer to Andrea on that.
Yeah, I didn't have it in today's presentation, but in April's presentation, we did have an actual visual image that comes right out of the guide. And it actually does show why we try to go with a minimum width up to a maximum width on the trail. And it really is so that you can have a person either in a wheelchair, a scooter, a pedestrian, and you can have space between them and a cyclist that could pass freely by them without any type of a conflict. And that's why we were also deferring to try to make the trail wherever possible the 3-meter width to again provide that additional separation. In comparison, your sidewalk is on average 1.5 meters wide, so you're really going 2 widths of a sidewalk, so you're giving enough room for the two to easily pass. And that like I said, I didn't have it in tonight's presentation, but it is in the April presentation material.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, it seems that we certainly don't want to mix them, though. It would be preferred. And I believe actually at the April presentation, it was indicated by Mr. Becerra that certainly it would be preferred if we could have these dedicated lanes. Last question for you, and then I'll let it go. But we have implemented throughout our town, for example, L'Esperance, and L'Esperance is another. I ride my bike, I head out, I go to Riverside Drive, and then I hit L'Esperance. And again, once I hit L'Esperance, it's a breath of fresh air because I have the dedicated cycling lanes that exist. There are sidewalks where I've seen, people walking, people running, but I've also experienced more, novice cyclists as well within that dedicated cycling lane. So, I question because we have our compatibility. It would be nice for us to keep that Riverside Drive compatibility with L'Esperance. I certainly understand, the desire for Ganacho, but again, this is not, has been indicated, not a Ganacho trail extension. It's something unique to Tecumseh, but it deviates from that compatibility that I certainly see. Please, Ms. Winter. Yeah.
Okay, so the interesting part is I actually was the L'Esperance Trail person. So I was the one who designed those cycling lanes when we took the bidirectional left turn lane out of the middle. And if you recall, when we worked on that presentation, what we were looking at was actually a multi-stage implementation on L'Esperance. So the ideal long-term solution on L'Esperance, in addition to the cycling lanes that are there, which are, as you said, there are some that will be a more novice user will attempt to use them, but they really are more for a regular commuter type of cyclist, avid cyclist. But on that, on L'Esperance, the ultimate goal would be to put a multi-use trail also along the west side, which we had spoke about, that would hit more of the all users eventually long term. But given that we had the asphalt to be able to provide for more commuter cyclists, we did at that time. And that's primarily the difference there, that ultimately we would like to put a multi-use trail on L'Esperance down the road as well.
So the vision, is the multi-use trail, but also the on-road cycling lanes as well. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. If you recall, when we did L'Esperance, we had the same arguments, people talking about the driveways and it was all the same the same arguments. But I want to add too today, you talk about novice cyclists. When I was coming to the meeting today, 2 young lads, or I would say they were maybe 10 to 12, they come out of I presume from the park here. They didn't use the road. They used the sidewalk. And these were 12, 10. They were on their own. They didn't use the cycling lane. They used the sidewalk. And so for me, I feel comfortable. I think the separation. I see that, and at least the drivers, there's demarcation there, and they see it. But I wouldn't want my 5-year-old grandson following me, whether front or back, and even on L'Esperance Road or Tecumseh Road for that matter. I'd be riding the sidewalk, which is illegal technically, and so forth. So, I just want to make that point that, and I think Andre, you're right in terms of when when we did Les Bronx, that was an interim measure. And if you recall, Deputy Mayor, that's something that we've been asking for a long time. Is at least it's a start. And but the west side is the intent is a trail to follow. Mr. Bartnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just further comments on the Les Bronx and the Riverside Drive kind of similarities. So I know Andrea spoke to Les Bronx Road and kind of the phased approach that the town has taken. Obviously, the first phase was the implementation of the bike lanes because the road platform was there. As part of the town's transportation master plan on Les Bronx itself, it did call for an on-road and off-road facility. And similar on Riverside Drive as well, right? And so again, it's almost like a phased approach on Riverside Drive, but kind of in reverse, right? So, you know, we're bringing forward the trail, and I think the alignment, the proposed alignment of the trail is conducive for that future phase, you know, when the road is reconstructed and when the bike lanes are fully installed and, you know, the road is brought to that urban cross section, that it has the potential to keep the trail in place, have the lowest amount of, I would say, throwaway costs when the bike lanes and the road work do take place.
Okay. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Paul and Andrea, for the presentation tonight. Just a couple questions. One was startling. One of your slides was the commencement date of 2017. And I hope as a council, we can make a decision and move this project forward because status quo is not acceptable. But we also have to find a compromise that it's not one size fits all. The design in terms of, we talked about book 18, and I'm not an engineer, but obviously, you know, there's certain guidelines that we talked about earlier. I'm troubled and struggling with the old Tecumseh Road, which I like that. Like Councilor Altanoff said, he feels, you know, a breath of fresh air when he hits that stretch. At the county level, CWATS, you know, when they did that design, they used WSP, and I believe Lakeshore used another consulting firm. And so they recommended that design, but yet in your presentation, you're not recommended. So is it, you know, what the preference, the bias of a consultant engineer that recommends one design over another, where why is it okay for Lakeshore and why it's not okay for us? Maybe that's kind of a technical question in terms of why you're supporting one. And meanwhile, we had two consultants on the old Tecumseh design that obviously that was the recommended way to go.
So the interesting part of engineering is that each designer does look at each situation as to what makes sense. I won't comment on what the background was on that other design because I obviously don't know all of the details or what their intended user was. And it may have been that their user that they were trying to target was more of an avid cyclist. It could have been for a variety of reasons. In this situation, why we've truly gone with the recommendation we have is twofold. We know that there is a potential long-term cycle lane option that could happen long-term when the road gets reconstructed, but to do that initially would be much more expensive than what we're proposing with the multi-use trail, and it would only hit a part of the population. So we chose to go with the as large a portion of the population as our intended audience as we could to provide the initial phase, which is the multi-use trail. So that's why, from my perspective, I'm choosing this as a design preference.
Okay. Follow up, I think Phil wants to add before I do my follow up. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and to Deputy Mayor Becchetti. I just wanted to add some additional comments to your question about the Lakeshore facility. So on the agenda tonight, I believe it's number 7 under communications. The The County of Essex is undertaking a kind of a pilot project on that facility on Old Tecumseh Road that was just recently installed. And I don't know if you've been down there lately, but they have been installing flexible bollards. They're going to do some paint enhancement, some signage enhancement, and also an installation of rubber curbs. And this seems to be in response to a number of residential complaints about speeding, the optics of safety issues with vehicles kind of veering into whether it's the cycling lane or the pedestrian lane as well. So we're keeping a close eye on that facility. And I think the other comment I wanted to make on that facility, and I think Andrea spoke to it earlier in her presentation, is the concept of trying to provide as much separation from the proposed facility from the roadway itself. It gives that comfort level to the user, right? And I don't know if perhaps 6 years ago I would have had the same thought process, but you know, having 3 kids under the age of 6 definitely opens my eyes to differently when looking at infrastructure, and obviously safety is a huge importance, and trying to keep that separation from the user away from the road.
Okay, thank you. The other question I believe I have for administration, maybe one other one in terms of the lineage where the present sidewalk is. We talked about, and I think Mr. Bezier and Ms. Winter, you did allude to the rationale why you are recommending the trail in the location where it's at. Is there a possibility, depending on property owners, where, you know, does it need to be along their property line? Are we able to move that towards the road on the north side of the utility pole? Does it have to be 9 or 3 meters? Could it meander? Could it, you know, in terms of safety, we have trails, Manning Road to Brighton, and that's, you know, a simple trail. It's not as wide. It does its purpose. Commuters, cyclists, pedestrians, they safely, you know, I haven't heard of any issues there in that stretch. And then we have Old Tecumseh Road in terms of their design. So if you are cycling or if you are walking, a safe trail in terms of, you know, staying distance from the road, is it possible where council can, you know, give direction and say this is the kind of the concept design that we want, rather than that one size fits all?
I can answer. Yeah, I can answer part of that. Certainly, on the south side, the trail does not need to be, for the most part, right along the property line. It's because we have a little more room to maneuver on the south side. So it is possible, and it is designed on a conceptual level as a meandering sort of pathway that does move away from the property line when there's the opportunity to do so, sometimes to move around in obstructions. I know Andrea stressed we're not at final design stage. So while we're showing a conceptual design for a pathway, we will get more into that as we get out there and do the measurements of all of the spaces and meet with some of the homeowners in order to find the absolute best location for that pathway. But there is certainly more flexibility on the south side to where that path goes than there is on the north side.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Phil, I mean, some of the concerns, and maybe Andrea can also, going through that area, and in particular on the far east side, as it now is going to interconnect with the Manning Road project that's underway right now. And I know there was some, it is pretty tight there. There's no question. If you look at the overheads, there's kind of a bank of trees, and then there's, 3-4 hydro poles that are pretty tight amongst the trees. I mean, it's really, I call it defoliate a lot of the trees that were there and so forth. And to, I think, Mr. Bezer's point, we're not even into the design stage here, but I could see those poles disappearing and maybe underground work, working with our utility, because, you know, from what I see there is that, that it would shrink dramatically to try to, avoid the poles and so forth. So could you give us your take on that?
Yeah, perhaps I'll start and maybe Andrea can kind of fill in the blanks after, but yes, you are correct. So I think when we're getting closer to the east side limits, closer to Manning Road and the roundabout, it does become somewhat of a pinch point. And I believe we're looking at options, but one of the options I think we are looking at is trying to keep the trail adjacent to the curb that was recently installed as part of the roundabout. And in addition to that, putting the utilities and hydro underground and removing some of those hydro poles. We still have some details to work out as part of detailed design, especially with the utility companies on how far back and the number of poles, but I believe the intent was to bury the hydro in that location, give us a little bit more room, a little bit more separation from the vegetation, from the trees, from the property line in that area. And that will also assist, I think, with the installation of the pedestrian crossovers that we're also planning as part of the Manning Road Phase 3 project, which Dylan is also working on, but will require a review of, placement of signs, push buttons, perhaps overhead flashing lights, as well as a review of enhanced road lighting as well, right? So when the roundabout went in prior to PXOs actually being approved by the MTO. So now we're going to have to look at, do we need enhanced lighting to go along with these PXOs to provide pedestrian safety as well.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Andrea.
I will mention that as part of the design to date, we did have some initial meetings with the utility company, and we did specifically talk to them about some of those poles closest to the roundabout and whether or not they could be adjusted in alignments, lengths, or if we would have to go underground. And we are aware that there are a couple right there that are pinch points and we will have to look at that in depth, but we have started that discussion so that we could understand if it was even feasible to move those poles or what the implications of moving those poles would be.
Okay. Councillor Altenhoff.
Thank you, Worship. And I'm sorry, I apologize for this, but I forgot, I guess the most obvious question is, there's currently, quite a bit of hardscaping that exists on the north side. It's load bearing. I asked the question, I think last time, and I'm quite sure it is about, I'm willing to bet, I'll bet $2 on it. But I'm quite sure it is because I've seen trucks, I've seen cement trucks, I've seen all types of vehicles parking on this really kind of I just call it a gray space, hard space. Why can't we exploit that area and use it, because it is quite significant and it is our land. Thank you. I'd like to, from the consultants, please, their input on that.
I'm not quite sure what you mean by, did you say art space?
Yeah, there's a significant on the north side of Riverside Drive, a hard space, what I refer to as hard space, or
hard space.
It's a gravel, I don't want to call it a trail, but it's a gravel patch that's at least the width I know of a concrete truck plus, because I've certainly experienced and seen that. But
yeah,
so we're not using that area. We could beautify that area by putting down asphalt, relocate some things and perhaps not be so intrusive.
The difficult thing with using that space on the north side is it's a matter of not space, but grade elevation. So the roadway is designed as a sort of a semi-rural cross section. So you don't have curbs. The water drains from the peak of the road down, on a sloped road down the side and then onto gravel. It continues to go down another little ways until it gets to approximately where the paved area you're talking about and or the sidewalk is. The sidewalk reverses grade and goes back up in the other direction. And so where that V is the area where we often get flooding, and we get complaints of flooding along the north side of the drive. If we take that sort of 4 or 5 foot sidewalk that is sloped towards the road for the most part, and we widen it to 9 or 10 feet wide, you can imagine that it has to go deeper, right? We can't raise it at the private property line because we can't raise the grade there. So the only way we can widen the walkway on the north side would be for it to continue its slope for a longer period of time, and it would go down more. That would make the issue of flooding worse because we'd have this larger sheet of asphalt draining to a location where there's really no place for it to go. The drainage on the north side of the drive is sort of spotty. It's not a continuous drainage system where you have, you know, a catch basin every 200 feet or that sort of thing. The catch basins, from what it appears to me, and I haven't been around that long for it, but it appears that wherever there was a drainage problem, a catch basin's been put. And if we were to widen the pavement on that side and make it lower in elevation than the road than it is now, you would end up with very much worse drainage issues than we have there now. So it wasn't really the spatial issues, it was the difficulties with drainage on that side that caused us the concern.
Okay. Any further questions or comments to our delegation? Wonder if we could, at this stage here, while they're here as well, is that I think we've had quite a discussion. If we can bring report 29, I believe, Phil. Well, first, if I could have a motion to receive the report that was presented during the delegation. Councilor Dowie, Councilor Tonio, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. If I could have a motion to bring the, I believe, yeah, recommendation from Public Works, number 29 forward. Councilor Houston, Deputy Mayor Becchetti.
Your Worship, I don't know if this might be a point of order. We do have communication number 21 that's relative to this. And if we're considering the item now, then we'll have made a decision before considering that piece of communication.
Well, I'm certainly okay with that. I mean, that's receiving information. Then don't go away, Mr. Bezier and Ms. Winters. Okay, so we dealt with the receipt of the motion. Then if I could have a motion, then we'll move on to communications. We have 21 items of communications. Can I have a motion to move them forward? And receipt. Councilor Houston, Councilor Jobin. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Any communication piece that council want to bring forward at this stage? Yes, Councilor Dowie.
Yes, thank you, Worship. I did want to cite item 21, and I'm hopeful that administration could respond to that piece of communications during their presentation of the item.
I presume, Mr. Bartnick, you're going to
Yes,
respond.
sorry. Thank you, Your Worship. So this communication number 21, I believe it's only the first part of the email. And I think we're going to try and work with the clerk's department to get the full email thread on. But I'll do my best to kind of fill in the blanks on the response that was provided. So the correspondence before council today was essentially requesting a further review or reclassification of the project as it relates under the municipal class environmental assessment process. And we heard from the consultants earlier this evening. I believe Andrea touched on it briefly, but I was hoping to do maybe a deeper dive. So in accordance with the municipal class EA process, the Riverside Drive Trail was classified as a Schedule A+ project. And this was documented in our previous report to council on the April 8th special council meeting. And this was essentially not only our interpretation of the guidance documents, but it was in accordance with the Municipal Engineers Association guidebook for municipal class EAs. So by definition, the Schedule A projects are limited in scale and have minimal adverse environmental effects on the natural environment and matters of provincial importance. So these types of projects are exempt from the requirements of the Environmental Assessment Act and may proceed to implementation without following the Class EA process itself. So there is really no ability for the public to request a Part 2 order on a Schedule A plus project, which is essentially an appeal mechanism to the Ministry of Environment. So although Schedule A plus projects are pre-approved and may proceed to implementation, the public is to be advised. But the manner in which the public is advised is to be determined by the proponent. So some examples that have been provided, a notice provided to adjacent property owners, hand-delivered mail, a notice posted on site, reports to council, or even list of projects on the town's website. So those are some examples of what would satisfy that requirement to notify the property owners. So to date, there has been a significant amount of public consultation, reports to council that would satisfy that requirement. However, I believe as detailed in the administrative report, should the project proceed to the detailed design stage, there will be further discussions with individual property owners whose landscaping or irrigation systems or other kind of landscaping features are located on the municipal right-of-way and would in fact need to be relocated, or those items that are identified that need to be relocated. So the continued discussions with the property owners on some of their concerns with respect to landscaping and trees and features doesn't stop today. If we do proceed forward, there will be some continued discussions and correspondence and coordination with those individual property owners. And ultimately, upon our review of the request, within the correspondence, we feel that we have followed the proper process, and the Schedule A+ classification for the project satisfies the requirements under the EA.
Councilor Dowie.
Well, thank you, Worship, through you to Phil. Phil, would you be able to just identify what the next schedule up would require of administration? I believe it's a project file being published. Is my understanding correct?
Yes, so through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Dowie. So there are a number of project schedules that are identified in the municipal class EA process. They range from A and A+, which are really pre-approved projects that have minimal or no adverse environmental impact. Then you move further up the line to a Schedule B project. So an example of which, we recently did a Schedule B EA when we were looking at installing a sanitary sewer over on Sylvester Drive, but it was not within the right of way. In order to service 4 or 5 properties, we had to get a significant easement. Then you move up to kind of a Schedule C type projects. Those types of projects have more significant environmental and social impacts. Another good example of a Schedule C, if you're going from a 2-lane road cross section to a 4 or 5 lane road cross section, right? So another good example is the county, the city, and MTO for County Road 42 and the Lozon Parkway extension had to undertake a Schedule C schedule. And there's a lot more studies that are undertaken, a lot more points of public consultation required as part of those processes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Dowie. Any further questions on 21? I'd like to bring your attention to also to a request of discretion on regional reopening strategy. That's item 6, County of Essex. That was passed on June 2nd, and that was a letter sent to the Premier. So I'm looking on item 6 for support to the county. Moved by Deputy Mayor Bichetti and supported by Councillor Altenhoff. Go ahead, Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship. Just trying to understand the net impact of this. So if there was a reduction in the number of local cases, we would have the economy reopen and then we'd proceed to shut down if there was an increase in cases?
Well, let me tell you, last year, a year ago, the whole province of Ontario was open. And for 6 to 8 weeks, we were shut down because of Leamington and Kingsville. Right now, if you were to talk with Dr. Ahmed has already said that he supports the fact that we should be able to reopen further than where we are under Schedule 1 and 2. Our case levels are the lowest they've been since March of last year. And all indication is that they're going to continue to trend downward. Today, our caseload was 1. Our hospital load is down to 6 people. So it's time. You heard our previous delegation on the Tourism Bureau, and that we've got our businesses are really suffering. A lot of the additional programs that have been given to them early on in the pandemic are now exhausted. Many businesses are going under, and it's really looking at the real numbers certainly in the region. And if you recall, from early on, from the second or the third wave in the area, there was merits for us not to reopen, and the province did do it. But things are moving in a different way. We're approaching 80% received their first vaccine. We're over 30% now in second. By the end of the year, there'll be an additional 41,000 doses of vaccine coming to our community, and the majority of that's for the on second dose. So we're well exceeding the numbers that we're going from step 1 to 2 and on to 3. And as we were held back last year, now we're being held back. And if you look at between Windsor, Essex, Chatham, Kent, we're talking, I believe, 1 case and so forth. So this was unanimously supported by the county on June the 2nd. Okay, no further questions or comments on the motion. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you. Any further communication piece that members deem for action? Okay, none. Thank you for that. We have no committee minutes, and so we'll certainly go into reports. And we can go to number 29. Our delegation is still on. So if I could have Mr. Bartnick bring your report forward.
Thank you, Your Worship. So report number 29, I'll just perhaps highlight the recommendations that are contained within the administrative report. So the first recommendation is that the reports be received by council. The second recommendation is that we recommend that the recommendation from the town's consultants, Bezair Partners and Dillon Consulting Limited, to proceed with the installation of a recreational multi-use trail on the south side of Riverside Drive from the Tecumseh-Windsor border to Manning Road be adopted. And the third recommendation is, and that the Riverside Drive Trail project proceed to the detailed design stage in accordance with the recommendations from the town's consultants.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bartnick. On the first piece, that the review and recommendation be received. Councillor Dowie and Councillor Houston. Any questions or comments? There are none, all in favor. Opposed, if any, that is carried. On the second portion, that the recommendation from the town's consultants, Bezair Partners and Dillon Consulting Limited, to proceed with the installation of a recreational multi-use trail on the south side of Riverside Drive and Tecumseh-Windsor, the Tecumseh-Windsor border to Manning Road be adopted. Council's pleasure. Councilor Houston.
Just a question, Mayor. I don't know, the recommendation there states, proceed with the installation, but is that a little premature? Because shouldn't the detailed design happen before the installation? I'm just not sure if it should be written one before the other.
Well, I'll pass that on to Mr. Bartnick, but I think that's part of the process.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, definitely a little bit of wordsmithing there, but I think the intent with that one was that the recommendations coming from the town's consultant was to proceed with the trail on the south side of the road. And I believe the third recommendation kind of ties it together, acknowledging that the next step in the process would be to proceed to the detailed design stage.
Okay.
So they're flipped.
Yep. Yeah. So I mean, I'll move that. I'll move that recommendation.
Thank you, Councilor Houston. Do I have support on the motion?
I'll second the motion to bring it for discussion.
Thank you, Councilor Dowie. Okay, discussions, comments? Yeah, Deputy Mayor, seconder was Councilor Dowie. Councilor Dowie, Deputy Mayor Bichetti, Councilor Altenhoff, Councilor Houston.
Okay, thank you, Worship. Question to the administration. I think we heard loud and clear from Ms. Winter and Mr. Bezair that how important it was in their eyes that we may maintain that clearance from basically from the vehicular traffic or the motorized traffic to the location of the multi-use path. And I did hear your comments earlier about certainly your own experience. And so I think what I would like to reinforce through any motion would be that the alignment that is put forward is subject to variation and correction depending on the circumstances of the situation. I think I believe all around the table, we want, if we are going to have an impact, or if there's going to be an impact on someone, that there be certainly a discretion or a direction to work to mitigate for the common good. And so I would like to see, does that need to be locked into a specific wording in such a motion, or is that something that is understood by the administration should this motion pass?
That's a good question, Councillor Dowie. My understanding, I think in both in Mr. Bartnick and certainly Mr. Bezerra's comments early on in that is that there will be some deviations. Or sorry, I think Ms. Winters had alluded to that as well, that there, it's not your traditional, straight path down, down an alley. It's certainly, there are obstructions that are above and beyond. So, but I will ask Mr. Bartnick to certainly bring some comments and on that question.
Thank you, Your Worship, and to you, Councillor Dowie. I believe the intent moving forward with the next steps is to, once the detailed design does commence, to be looking at these situations on a property by property basis, right? So whether or not there needs to be some deviations or some alterations to the conceptual design to mitigate any potential issues to separation or hydro poles or trees themselves. Obviously, the last thing we want to do is take down a tree. So I think the recommendation coming forward from the consultants on having that varied width between 2.4 meters and 3 meters gives a little bit of flexibility in the design, so they can work around some of those features. And it's not just the straight shot, 3 meter wide, kind of blinders on to some of those, whether it's landscaping or trees or other features that may be in the way. So I believe the intent was, we're presenting the conceptual design as best we know it today, and that there will be some changes and refinements as we go forward through detailed design.
Thank you. So just to confirm, so if with this motion, residents can have some confidence that someone from the project team will look at their situation and look closely at whether a modification that it might be warranted, and that there would be an adjustment to find a good consensus position.
Through Your Worship, yes, the intent is to meet with those individuals and try to address those concerns. I don't think we'll be able to address all of the concerns, right? Because obviously, with the construction of the trail does come some removal of landscaping and trees, but we want to see how much we can mitigate that during the detailed design stage.
And thank you, and thank you for your earlier response on the piece of communication.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Phil, who does the detailed design? Once that's done, does that come back to council, or is that kind of just go on to the right next step and go on to the tender and construction? Like in terms of what we just talked about, like the project team, whoever that's composed of, that they will have the final say if this project goes forward into a detailed design. But does that detailed design come back, or once this motion's passed, it forges ahead and in terms of mitigating some of those issues, in terms of keeping it, if you can, away from the property line so that it's not a right along there? And because I think that's one of the main issues there, is that it's abutting right along that property line to save perhaps cost on a road that is scheduled 8 to 10 years, could be 12 to 15. We don't know when that road's going to get reconstructed. So, if it buys us time, I'm not too concerned with having to worry about what happens 15, 20 years down the line. Let's make it safe now. And if this project team, whoever that may be, Phil, that can keep those things into consideration, where we could avoid some of the landscape, because on page 4, I believe, of the report, it talks about additional costs in terms of the town having to acquire easement. If we can shift it over a meter, you avoid having to negotiate easements and cost, and a lot of the removal that need to be replaced, whether they be trees. Those are things that I'm hoping for in the detailed design that we can mitigate and avoid those. So again, I don't know what your vision of this project team, who has that final say. So maybe if you can kind of provide more details on how you see that taking place, and is that detailed design done, or does it come back to council?
Yes, thank you, through your worship. So this question has come up, has kind of surfaced just recently, kind of next steps in reporting, and how does council get to see kind of like the final product. So we have been thinking about, do we provide an update as part of our annual capital works program? Does it warrant kind of a separate report to council, kind of a project update? And if council does recall, we did something similar with regards to the Lakewood Park stormwater channel, where we didn't follow the kind of the traditional sense of, get project approval, go to detailed design, and essentially the next time council sees this is the award of tender. The Lakewood Park channel, as we kind of progressed through the design, we wanted to get council's understanding of the extent of the project, and so we did come back with an update prior to tendering. So if that is the wish of council, that is something that I think we are open to do once the detailed design is done and some of these tweaks and modifications have been completed. The other comments to the additional costs on page 4 and easements. I just wanted to note that I think to date there's technically been that one property that's been identified where there's kind of potential property or easements required. I believe it's closer to the Les Bronx Riverside Drive intersection, and whether the pathway proceeds or not, it is definitely something that we have to follow up on, because it does appear that the sidewalk kind of overlaps with the private property fabric that we have as part of the GIS. But that's essentially a flag for administration to pull the legal property files and do a little bit further investigation on that.
Okay, thank you. And again, I'd be more comfortable supporting the motion if we could put some wording in that, what you explained, Phil. I'm not sure how we can do that, but just to give comfort in terms of knowing that, I'm voting for something, knowing exactly what the detailed design looks like versus based on the consultant's recommendation, which again, if we're looking at two different ideas here, I'm making a vote on an uninformed detailed design. So if we could put that wording, I'd be comfortable moving forward where the detailed design comes back and we get updated.
Mr. Bartnick?
Thank you, Your Worship. Sorry, just one additional point of clarification. So, as we would proceed through the detailed design phase and there would be tweaks and kind of refinements to the design, I would suspect that the overall location of it being obviously between the hydro poles and the property line, it would be somewhere in that zone itself. I don't think that there would be kind of a larger philosophy switch to move it closer to the road. And I believe Andrea has kind of outlined the rationale why you want that further separation from the road for the comfort of the users, safety, as well as reduce the throwaway costs once the road and potential bike lanes in the future do get installed. But within that kind of platform between the hydro poles and the property line, there is a little bit of room to work with there. So.
Okay, Deputy Mayor. Okay. Councillor Aldenhoff.
Thank you, Worship. And firstly, I want to thank He hit my first point there about the communication J12. So thank you for that, Councillor Dowie, and getting a response out. Secondly, just a question, and then I'll have a statement to make. But the question to Mr. Bartnick or the consultants, Ms. Winter, Mr. Bézère, what is the closest distance that we see between the road and the proposed trail, kind of along the route? Now, I recognize, again, we talk about tweaking and changing, but look, we've got to look at it right now as proposed. What distance are we currently at? What's that shortest distance?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Altenhoff's question. Sorry, Andrea, I'll just jump in. It's my understanding there's a couple of pinch points, I think, throughout the corridor. One obviously being L'Esperance Road, and the other one being closer to the Manning Road roundabout, right? And so I believe in those locations, the pathway would be adjacent to the curb, but only for a short section in those locations.
Okay, thank you very much, but adjacent to it. Okay, thank you. I just wish to provide this last statement, and then I'll recess. But I really do appreciate all the efforts, from the consultants as well as administration on the current proposal for the Riverside Drive trail or pathway. But from the input that I've received, as well as my experience on using this area and the neighboring areas over the past 25 years, I believe that the proposal misses out on a number of very important fronts, which include, but not necessarily limited to, first off, importantly, user groups. The proposed trail would not benefit road cyclists, and these individuals really do form a significant amount of the current user group, which is dangerous. We need to provide them a little bit of buffer, and again, we have examples in Windsor as well as Lakeshore, and again, in my road cycling adventures, I can attest that I've had a number of close calls on that section of Riverside Drive and brush-ups with vehicles during my time of use. The rationale that the consultants has provided that a dedicated cycling lane would not be comparable with those nearby trails, I don't necessarily agree with. L'Esperance Road currently implements a road cycling lanes, which would integrate nicely. Additionally, both Lakeshore and Windsor have implemented such. I fully expect that as further road reconstruction occurs in Windsor to Tecumseh, dedicated cycling lanes will follow as they, as currently present. A dedicated cycling lane would appropriately separate cyclists from runners, walkers, pedestrians, and is certainly safer than a multi-use trail to allow that separation for those users. With regards to the second point of residents, certainly the proposed trail will affect the lifestyle of our residents and many other people in both positive and I think potentially negative ways. But my feeling is that we may see more negative issues rather than positive with the proposed design. If the proposed plan does move forward, I would expect that the current cyclists, runners, users, walkers, and so forth will basically kind of remain kind of status quo or very near that for their continued use. Certainly a trail or a pathway that is proposed that would be a benefit. But I also concerned that if the proposed plan does move forward, our residents on the south side of Riverside Drive who have articulated the concerns about safety, reduction of green space, and extreme proximity to their private lands will see these impacts. And it's very important for us to consider these because we really, I think, desire all our residents to be in the best possible state that we can. Important aspect, which really has not been well articulated, I think, is what I refer to as kind of the emotional / relationship costs associated with the significant altering of really beautiful landscapes and green space that our residents have created and nurtured over the years. Albeit it may be on town property, but these do help beautify our town, and I believe we should show respect to those individuals accordingly. Another really important point that is bothering me is the stewardship of the environment. The hardscape and gravel surface, which I really have no doubt is load-bearing on the north side of Riverside Drive, is really well suited for an asphalt surfacing. This will beautify that area, permit room for a shift in the road, and allow dedicated cycling lanes with a sidewalk, pedestrian, running, walker, user lanes. And I'm confident we can deal with drainage issues because we have been, and I expect we could deal with that in engineering. If the proposed design moves ahead, the green space on the south side of Riverside Drive will be removed and the abutting landscape altered, which I expect, in some cases would be significant. This entire situation will be quite bad for both the landscaping, the residents, I think the town, and I expect that it may have obviously a significant impact to the relationship between the town and its residents. I did crunch some real quick numbers, but to estimate the removal of that using basically the width and its length is approximately equal to 1.25 football fields worth of green space. I think that's significant. The point of returning green space back to some version of its original form if road reconstruction occurs in the future is really, I believe, a poor position on being stewards to the environment. As the works will have significant carbon footprint impact and also destroy this current green space. From a practical point of view, I see it not making sense to plan for some form of a return to what we currently have. There is a significant amount of room that exists between the southerly tip of the road of Riverside Drive to the northerly tip of the sidewalk along that entire stretch. Believe me, when I was cycling this last yesterday, I took a look up and traveling westward, being on that short 4-inch path of paint, I was almost equidistant between the northerly and southerly sides of those points I'm making. So I believe we have some space here, and certainly putting in dedicated cycling and pedestrian lanes would benefit. We do not need to start taking away or adding more hardscape surface through the removal of such wanted green space. I believe there's other solutions, some of what I've commented on, which would provide a more optimal trail or path system for Tecumseh residents and really the larger population, which could benefit, again, Windsor, Tecumseh, Lakeshore, all the way out. The lowest cost alternative, although no significant costing details on really those other options was presented, is really a poor way to move forward. So I provide these as my comments, and I will not be supporting, certainly unless we see a deviation in the recommendation, I will not be supporting the recommendation as presented. Thank you.
Councilor Houston.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've always been an advocate, for trails in sidewalks, and as Councillor Altenhoff has mentioned, I do think the bike lanes on the road are a fantastic idea, but I also believe that we need as much separation in the roadway in this proposed path, and I think the long-term solution in road reconstruction and adding bike paths in addition to this trail, will be the ultimate solution. And, for me, thinking about this, as Mr. Bartnick has mentioned, I've got two, younger daughters, grade 5 and 6, and I'm probably the only council member who's had a pathway installed in front of his house when I used to live on the 12th concession. And I remember when I first met some of our public works crew, they were out, spray painting the road and getting it ready to go. My first reaction was, hey, what's going on? And my home was about 13 meters from where the proposed pathway came in and was installed. Was the best thing for me that could have been done, and the amount of people in use, even on the 12th concession, the road was much, much safer for us to use. It was a place for my girls, and I saw a lot of families, up and down that road. So, I do believe, and I do believe in the concept of what's been proposed. I am looking forward to the detailed design of what the outcome will be. In receiving some calls from residents, some of the concerns, I would look on Google Maps, I would look in our system, I would drive by and I would see their properties, but I really didn't have 100% idea of exactly what the proposed pathway would look like. But I do know, and it's been talked about a lot, we are going to have the collaboration between, the engineers, our staff, and the residents, to come up with a solution, which, ultimately, I hope that, everyone can agree on. But I am in support of this pathway, looking forward to see it through, through the entire process. And I will be supporting this. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Houston. Councillor Tonio.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, through you. For myself, for me to support this proposal, it's multiple things in my mind, and I think a lot of the questions have been answered already. Is A, the citizens that live and abut this property and this facility we want to put in. And I'm confident our administration and our consultants will work directly with each resident to take care of their concerns, because they all had valid concerns of what could happen to the change of their property and their lifestyle, and we need to accommodate that. As an OPP instructor of the bicycle course, the biggest thing I always taught was the safety aspect. Is as a cyclist, I'm responsible for 360 degrees around my bicycle. Vehicles, the same thing. When you're driving a vehicle, you're 360 degrees responsible for what's happening around it. As things change in our community, we got to change how we back out of our driveways or do various things. But I'm hoping together we can come to a resolve that the trail is needed for our community to transport themselves on bicycles or various mechanisms, or just walking along the Riverside Drive area. But we also have to be considerate of the residents, and I think we'll be able to accommodate that through our administration and our consultants. Thank you.
Councillor Dowling.
There we go. Thank you, Your Worship. So this is, we're about 4 years in, if not more, on this topic. And I know this is one that's certainly been a very challenging file. I think the vast majority of the residents affected by this are my constituents, and they are looking out for me to uphold their best interests. And who you talk to, their opinion may differ depending on where you live and how you use Riverside Drive. I grew up very close to Riverside Drive, and I walked crossing Riverside Drive multiple times as a youth. It's busy today. It was busy 30 years ago or 40 years ago. Okay, starting to age myself. And it's certainly, I wouldn't showcase it as a hallmark for what others ought to do for a road like that. I think I've been pretty consistent over the years indicating that I support active transportation on Riverside Drive. I have no bias as to the technical solution, just that the status quo doesn't cut it for me. I think we can do better. I've given fair consideration to the arguments that have been brought forward. I have certainly challenged the staff and have challenged our consultants to respond to a lot of the items. And I see, I have to say, I see where many of the residents' concerns are coming from. They've highlighted a number of just issues. And one of the most disturbing parts of this is how the issue has really become more toxic than it ought to have been. I think when you do go visit the different neighbors who live there and who are affected by it, they bring forward very rational concerns, and they want to make sure that they don't want to be negatively affected by an installation. I'd like to think that I saw a great deal of reason in our discussions that we've had over the last number of years with many of the individuals. And I think that there is a path, pardon the pun, forward for the incorporation of this multi-use path way through Riverside Drive. But I certainly want to stress that we need to work with each and every one of the homeowners to find that proper corridor so that we find the right balance, because ultimately these residents are the stewards of the property. They are the eyes and ears, and they have to deal with a great deal of traffic movements in their day-to-day. The recommendations given to us tonight spoke to Book 18 from the province of Ontario, the guidelines for facility design. There has been a change in mindset, and that has led, as has been mentioned earlier, to a change in the philosophy about what we ought to prioritize as our goals. Prior, it was put forward the cyclist as the sphere of your decision making. It has become a bit more balanced under the version to come. So having that all ages and abilities facility is something that is being encouraged through the guidelines that are to come, still in draft stage, but that is the direction. So, in the end, I did second the motion. I do have faith that we will find the right balance here. I have been, I was certainly open to other alternatives, and the explanations given with regard to the impact on the remainder of the infrastructure, specifically the grading and how adding onto the permeable extent or impermeable extent of pavement would start to wreak havoc and have unknown repercussions. That was a big one. You think of a bike lane on each side, which 5 feet plus another buffer, there's 12 feet on the road, plus another 5 feet of sidewalk on the south side. That's a whole lot more pavement than the trail is, and ultimately creates more of an environmental impact than the proposal would, with an unknown impact on the surface grading and how that will be diverted either onto people's properties or onto the road itself, which may in turn lead to some more slippery conditions. And really, any of these things, you could hammer these items to death. At the end of the day, I think a reasonable effort had been made by council to try and find that path to get to a better active transportation facility. As was cited, 6 figures have been expended on this to get to this point, to try and evaluate all of the concerns that have been brought forward. And responses are maybe not where I think a lot of the residents want them to be. And I certainly acknowledge that. And that's because we're at the concept stage. Many of the specific details have to get fleshed out with detailed design. But we can't get to detailed design until we settle on a concept. And so that is really the decision in front of us. Do we agree with the concept of a multi-use trail? So we, depending on the results of the vote tonight, the recommendation is, and that is where I am going to support. I will support the recommendation on the understanding that I elaborated on further.
All right, thank you very much, Councilor Dowie. And I'm going to certainly weigh in at this one. And it's been quite an exercise, there's no question. And this is one that there is no perfection. If people are trying to find perfection, this is not it. If you're looking for an A+, it's not here either. Maybe a C- or a C+ at the end of the day. I'm glad, Councillor Dowie, you did bring up in terms of the surface area and the bike lanes and so forth. You're absolutely correct. I was going to bring that up. And I think the misconception here, for me, the decision is how many people in our community are we going to impact, and benefit. I think is where I'm certainly coming from. And reversing the bike lanes to a trail and, from L'Esperance Road and so forth. To me, that's apples and oranges at this stage here. It's just that looking at that road, Riverside Drive, and yeah, we can engineer that road, but I need about $20 or $25 million. And then we could do one heck of a gateway there. But that's not the case, at this stage. We're serious, and we have been serious as a community on active transportation. The more people we put on, walking and certainly on bikes, yeah, that's what we want, to achieve our goals. I get the point too. I mean, I try to put myself in that position in terms of what if it was in front of my house? What if I had, planted a special tree or whatever, and then what that impact would be on me personally. I understand all that, but the reality is that many of our communities, and I know I went through that in Revland, when somebody knocked on my door and wanted me to sign a petition not to put a sidewalk in front of our houses. And I didn't sign it, number one. And I said, no, a sidewalk is warranted, and we certainly would need it. Yes, there were people that had put islands there, and they're, they were worried about losing their parking spots, safety issues, and so forth. Change sometimes is very difficult, for certain folks, but I have full confidence in our administration and certainly our consultants here that, all of this information that's been gathered and all the PICs and all that information that has been brought forward through emails and concerns from our residents, in particular, they're going to be the ones being impacted. There's no doubt that we're going to continue to work with them. Will it be perfection? No, that's not going to happen. But to try to mitigate as much of it as possible, I believe administration will do and the best that they can, and so will our consultants. But if we are true about active transportation and connecting our communities, we've got many projects coming forward. The L'Esperance extension, 42, 43, just to name a few, and connecting all of those communities are very important. But I really believe the more people that we can impact early on to be part of active transportation, I think that's certainly the end goal. So I certainly will be supporting the recommendation brought forward, moved and seconded by council. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. Am I able to do a friendly amendment on the third item? If we can add, and that the Riverside Trail project proceed to the detailed design stage with updates to council as the design stage goes along.
Hang on a second. I got Mark, our CAO.
Actually, if I could defer to Mr. Bartnick, Mayor, I believe he was talking about an update at the end of the detailed design process. So I just wanted to confirm that understanding. Thank you.
Yes, through your worship, I was speaking to perhaps an update at the end of the detailed design once we have spoken to all the property owners and have been able to kind of put the drawings together. 95% or 99% complete.
And will that come back? Will that come back to council for us to see? Because I want to vote on a detailed design that I know is there right now. It's not here, so it makes it difficult for me to support number 3. If we can add a friendly amendment that once the detailed design is complete, it comes back to council. We've worked. It's been 4 years now. I want to vote on a detailed design that I know what it looks like. So I don't know if that's friendly, your mayor.
So to come back to council after.
To report back to council the detailed design.
Yeah, I think the understanding as well is that, we're not going to reinvent it, down the road. Or we'll be another 2 or 3 years trying to figure this out. So to bring it in, show us what the final design after administration has worked with each individual homeowner, which they will.
Yeah,
And then,
that's the expectation is obviously the project team, Phil, whoever that is, with our consultants and Dillon Engineering, that the time is taken for that and due diligence is done and trying to address the concerns the best you can. And I know I heard tonight that there is that willing on behalf of administration and the consultants. So hopefully that'll give some, ease of mind to those residents. So, and look, there is a trail on the south side in terms of mitigating a lot of these, additional lands and, trees that will be able to work. Because if we do have some meanderability, I think we have a lot of green space that we can move this up and down a bit. And so I trust that will take place. But if we have that, where it comes back to council as a report at the end, it shows, a little bit of comfort on my end to be able to support this.
Councilor Houston.
I don't know if just adding on the end there that, proceed to the design stage in accordance with the recommendations from town consultants and provide a copy to council. I don't know if that achieves it for you, Deputy Mayor, or maybe Madam CAO, I know you had your hand up.
Yeah, I do believe it is going to come back to us.
I think it is, just so that I see it. And if I have a question, I want to be able to ask that question. And I know the town would be able to justify their position, but I want the report to come back to us when it's finished.
Yeah, okay. Madam CAO.
So through the mayor to council, I just want to be clear. I think that that the director has made that offer to bring back the kind of almost near complete final design. And I think that I'm just going to go out on a limb here, say that by the time we get to that, those drawings have to be, finalized and stamped by an engineer at the end of the day before they go to construction. So there will be, in my estimation, limited ability for tweaking, right? We can't tweak to the extent that we would not have a professional engineer sign off on the final product. So I don't want council to have different expectations about the latitude that they may have at that stage of the project. But I'm looking at my director here for input on their.
To your point, Madam CEO, that's my concern is the stamping of the drawings at the end of the day. I mean, obviously, any alteration or changes that we would make, then we would have to go back to the engineers and for their compliance. Because I'm looking here, there's 1 and there's 2 and there's 3 and then there's 4 engineers sitting in here. right there. And I know that's the process. So go ahead, Mr. Bartnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe the intent would be to bring a report back to council to be received for information. And I believe the example that I had referred to was that Lakewood Park stormwater channel,
Yes.
where it was kind of out of place, but we felt necessary to bring the report back just so council was fully aware of what the project looked like and what the next steps in the process were moving forward. So I kind of envision a similar style report, just advising, as to the progress that has been made to date, kind of the final detailed design, and then the next steps moving forward.
Okay, I get that, and I'm okay with that, but, based on the information that, whatever you call it, Phil, the project team will meet with residents to minimize the adverse effects to the property line and trying to meander around. If there's space between the property line and the utility pole that is used, again, that is what I want to see, is my expectation that will take place. And based on the information this evening, you indicated that will take place, correct?
Through you, Your Worship, yes, I think we are committed in continuing those discussions and meeting with those property owners to try to mitigate some of the impacts. Won't be able to mitigate all of them because obviously the trail, I think at a minimum width would be the 2.4 meters, but we will definitely look at exploring opportunities to try and mitigate some of the impacts.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions or comments?
So just a clarification on the wording, please, Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Okay, go ahead.
So that, and we would just add then, I think, paraphrasing Councillor Houston's language, and that the detailed design be reported to council.
Yes.
That effect.
Yeah, and I'll ask the seconder if he's amenable to that as well. Just, okay, and it's yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions or comments on the report as presented on the motion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? The motion carries. Thank you very much, Ms. Winters and Mr. Bezerra. Thank you for your patience tonight. I know we had a bit of a late start, but anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Yes. Where are we here? Get back. All right, next report, members of council, we have financial services, and that's the COVID-19 grant funding update. And Mr. Kitsos.
Mayor.
Share us with the good news.
Yes, I got some here for you. Good evening, Mayor and members of council. The purpose of this report is to provide council with an update of the financial relief programs that have been announced and for which the town is eligible. So as we were aware, since the outbreak of the pandemic, there have been several financial relief measures announced. It has been a little difficult to keep track of, so the intent here is just to give council an update of what we are eligible for and some specifics of the programs. So in the executive summary, you'll see the total amount that the town is eligible for totals around just under $1.7 million. So the grant program started with the Safe Restart Agreement, so SRA. So in that program, which was initially announced in 2020, there were 7 priority areas. Municipalities were one of those areas. Within that area, there are 2 streams available. So one is for general municipal operations, and the second was specific to transit. So in municipal operating stream, phase 1 was allocated on a per household basis. and the town was allocated $554,100. Those funds to be used towards direct COVID-19 financial impacts incurred during 2020. There was a second phase that had two parts to it. The first was application-based, and where municipalities were required to demonstrate a greater financial need. So Tecumseh was not able to demonstrate a greater financial need, so we were not eligible for the application-based. Most municipalities were not, and that's why there was a large portion of that funding available to be allocated in the second part of the phase two. So in second part of phase two was distributed in December. Well, actually it was announced in December, distributed in January 2021. And that was based on number of households in the municipality and the proportion of COVID-19 cases occurring in the municipality's public health unit. So Tecumseh was allocated $234,000 to be used towards 2021 COVID-19 operating costs and pressures. So we are in receipt of both of those funds. The direction has been to use them towards operating impacts, and if there is surplus, that they are to be put into reserves and to be used for either further 2021 financial impacts or potentially 2022. For the second stream of the SRA, there's the transit stream. So the town was allocated in phase one just under $34,000. Phase two was subsequently announced, and that required a transfer payment agreement to be entered into, which the town did. That provides us access to an additional $52,000 in relief funding. Those funds are to be used for the period April 1, 2020 to March 31, 2021. So for the SRA transit phases 1 and 2 funding, we have done our report backs to the province. And so we were able to use just around $31,000 of those. We have received the phase 1 allocation. Phase 2 was claims based, so we have not been advanced any of those funds to date. There was a phase 3 announced for transit, and that was allocation based as well. So the town has been allocated $20,141. This phase is a little different in that funding can be used towards COVID-19 costs or financial pressures, but there's also some strategic transit initiatives of the province that funds can be used towards. And one of those is on-demand micro transit. So that is something that the town is coincidentally pursuing. So should we require additional funds for that potential project, that we could, this would be a source. Another program is the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program. So this was originally launched in 2018 and 19, and it had 4 streams. So in November of 2020, the federal government created a COVID-19 resilience infrastructure stream. Funds for that for the province of Ontario would be drawn from the green infrastructure stream. The town of Tecumseh was allocated $342,607. That was announced or referenced in Council Report CAO 2021-03 and has been applied towards Category 2 COVID-19 response infrastructure. So that's primarily town hall HVAC units, physical barriers at town hall lobby, and new bulk water payment system. And then more recently in March 2021, there was the 2021 COVID-19 Recovery Fund for Municipalities program. So this is funding is allocated based on the proportion of COVID-19 cases in the public health unit for each respective municipality for a period from January 1, 2021 to February 18, 2021. So Tecumseh was allocated just under $450,000. We've received the first half of that allocation to date, with the second half to be received in November. Eligible costs for this program are similar to the SRA program, so that's direct operating costs. tied to COVID-19. And unused funds, if there are any, are to be placed into reserves. For SRA, the SRA municipal stream and the 2021 COVID-19 recovery fund, there has been no reporting to the province to date. However, there's an interim report is due at the end of this month for the 2021 COVID-19 recovery funding and a final reporting for SRA municipal phases 1 and 2. And lastly, there's the fire safety grant. So this was reported on to council in council report FIRE 2021-02. The town was allocated an amount of $10,300. And as indicated in that report, those funds will be used towards purchase of training software, fire management software to replace our existing system, and new digital camera for fire prevention officer.
All right. Any questions or comments? All right. Can I have a motion then to receive the report from our treasurer? Councillor Houston and Councillor Altenhoff. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you. Next report, Fire and Emergency Services. That's our Fire 2021-04. That's Windsor Dispatch Services. Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor McNamara and members of council. The report brought to you tonight is asking for consideration of signing the dispatch agreement with Windsor Fire and Rescue. The agreement is essentially a continuation of the current services that are provided by Windsor. The charges we see from them and the fees are per capita basis based on the population of the town. I would just note that Windsor Dispatch has always provided us, in my time with the department, with excellent customer service. They're on top of preventative maintenance in their system, and they're always available to deal with any issues that do arise throughout the system. And they're very easy to deal with, just as an overall customer. So I'm certainly available for any questions if there are any.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, then the report, Fire Services Report 2021-04 entitled Windsor Dispatch Service be received, and that the fire dispatch service continued to be provided by the corporation, the city of Windsor, and further that bylaw number 2021-51 being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute an agreement for fire dispatch services with the corporation of the city of Windsor be adopted. Moved by Deputy Mayor Becchetti, supported by Councillor Houston. On the motion, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Move on to item number 3, planning and building services, and that's PBS 2021-30 zoning bylaw amendment, 5648 North Talbot Road, scheduling a public meeting. Where's Mr. There it is, Mr. Jeffries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through this report, we are requesting that council authorize the scheduling of a public meeting for July 27th related to a 0.78 hectare parcel on the north side of North Talbot Road. It's at 5648 North Talbot Road. And the proposed rezoning is a condition of severance application B0721 that was granted provisional consent by the committee in May of this year. And that condition is in accordance with the official plan, which specifies that this type of severance can happen, but that the lands must be rezoned to conform to the official plan. And the official plan for this property designates the property residential. The current zoning of the property, however, is agricultural A-33. If you go to the next attachment, Sean, thank you. This illustrates the severance that was granted provisional consent by the committee. And you can see there's the severed property is a 0.29 hectare vacant parcel. The retained property contains a dwelling. It's 0.48 hectares in area. And once again, this is simply to facilitate this severance and meet the condition of a rezoning.
Okay. So looking for a motion, actually. Well, you're scheduling, you're not necessarily, we need a motion, or do we? Yes, we do. Yep. With the scheduling, Councillor Altenhoff, Councillor Houston. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to 3B. We got PBS 2021-28 official plan and zoning bylaw amendments for Bride A Victoria Development Corporation, also known as 12433 Dillon Drive. That's the former Victoria Public School. Proposed residential condominium development, final recommendation. Mr. Hillman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just a point of clarification, so we have two reports on, as council is aware, and with your indulgence, Mr. Mayor, I'll go through report number 32 that relates to this property, and it will speak to report number 28, if I could, and then we'll set the table for how to proceed and at least put ourselves in a position where council can discuss the matter. So if we were to look at report number 32, you'll notice that in the background, we are speaking to the meeting that was held on June 8th on this same matter. And report number, I'll just shorten it to report number 28. Report number 28 dealt with the Bride A application that relates to the former Victoria School site and the McCall road allowance that are a combined site, and it made recommendations on that development proposal, and that was presented to council in some detail. The purpose of the report was to give a final recommendation which dealt with a proposal to amend the official plan and the zoning bylaw on the 5.66 acre site. Sean, if you would just go to attachment 1 of report 32, please. And as you can see, sorry, attachment 1, if we could, Sean, thank you. So just to contextualize this, of course, the former Victoria School site and McCall Lane as the finger extending down to the south and all along the east side, just on the south side of Dillon Drive, I should say. And that report was recommending that the development of the site, as had been revised at that point, be approved. And if we go to the next image, please, Sean. And that consisted of a 63 unit site. Again, the red outline area is the property, and the color coding represents the proposed buildings on the site as labeled. And it was a total of 63 residential developments consisting of 6 two-story townhouse dwellings, totaling 23 units, 1 two-story stacked townhouse dwelling containing 16 units that faced onto Dillon Drive at the north end, and 1 three-story stacked townhouse containing 24 units along with a municipal park. Ultimately, after discussion, the matter was deferred by council by resolution, which essentially stated that report 28 with the final recommendation be deferred, and that administration reconnect with the applicant to discuss a reduction of a maximum of 2-story units and density, and further that administration report back to council. Subsequent to the June 8th meeting, administration did meet with the owner to discuss that resolution. The owner's planning consultant submitted a revised development proposal to the town under email dated June 15, which is attachment 3 to report 32. And the owner submitted a summary email to the town dated June 16th, and it's shown as attachment 4 to report 32. For ease of reference, if Sean, we go to attachment 5 of report 32, please. We have summarized in color what was provided to, sorry, Sean, whoops. Thank you. So it's report 2021-32, and it's attachment 5. There we go. Okay, so we have color coded what was provided to the town, and I'll just begin summarizing it once we get to it. So the former 3-story stacked townhouse. There we go. If we can just back out a bit. And thank you, Sean. Centrally located, the former 3-story stacked townhouse dwelling proposed at the centrally has been reduced to 2 stories, as you can see is labeled, and the hand is moving. The number of dwelling units within the centrally stacked townhouse dwelling has also been reduced from 24 units to 16. This drops the total dwelling unit count to 55 from the previous 63 for the entire development. The reduction in total units reduces the overall site density to 26 units per hectare from the previous 29 units per net hectare that was before council on June 8th. As a result of these changes, a number of other matters arose. The total number of parking spaces has been reduced by 10 from 144 to 134 to reflect the drop in dwelling units. And as a result of removing the 10 parking spaces, the landscaped open space has been increased, I'm sorry, to 55.9% from the previous 54.2. Both the density and the landscaped items that were just spoken to take into account the lot area after the parkland would be dedicated to the municipality. Our comments from administration are as follows in relation to this revised submission flowing from council's resolution. We find that it does effectively respond to that resolution by reducing the proposed 3-story stacked townhouse dwelling that is to be centrally located to 2 stories, resulting in all dwellings on the subject land having a maximum height of 2 stories. And by reducing the total number of dwelling units from 63 to 55, resulting in the density being reduced from 29 units per net hectare to 26. Ultimately, Mr. Mayor, in summary, and as detailed in report 28, we continue to have the opinion that the proposed official plan and zoning amendment as revised under this report dated this evening and number 32, that it is consistent with the provincial policy statement 2014 and PPS 2020, that it does conform to the County of Essex official plan, the former Tecumseh official plan, and the adopted new official plan. We continue to recommend that, if supported by council, that the zoning have a holding symbol attached to it, as we had discussed at the June 8th meeting. And on the basis of the foregoing, town administration does recommend that council pass bylaws amending the new official plan and the zoning bylaw to permit the development in keeping with Planning and Building Services Report 2021-32, which are included on this evening's agenda for formal consideration. So, Mr. Mayor, that is in summary where we find ourselves following the June 8th regular council meeting.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hillman. Okay. Do you want to read your recommendation? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Houston.
Nope, that's okay. If there was going to be a recommendation, I was just going to move it. But if you'd like it read, I will allow it to be read.
Well, okay, I will read, and then we'll open it up and we'll see if there's a mover and second, and then we certainly have further discussions. It is moved and seconded that the report PBS 2021-28 official plan and zoning bylaw amendments, Bride Victoria Development Corporation, 12433 Dillon Drive, former Victoria Public School, proposed residential condominium development, final recommendations be received. And that a bylaw having the effect of amending the Tecumseh official plan by changing the land use designation for 2.29 hectare, 5.66 acre parcel of land situated in the south side of Dillon Drive, approximately 40 meters east of its intersection with St. Pierre Street, 12433 Dillon Drive, and former McCall Street right-of-way from community facility to residential and recreational in order to facilitate development of the lands for, and I think that needs to be corrected, isn't it? 55 units?
Mr. Mayor, if I could, report number 32 at the beginning of it has the recommendation, which is the appropriate one to be reading. It fundamentally.
This shouldn't even be here.
What it's recommending is receipt of report 28, and then it proceeds to go on to, there it is on the screen.
Okay.
So you were just past the bottom of this page, I believe. That
Yeah,
32
63 residential development consisting of, the 6 two-story, which you've explained. So basically,
It's just on the top of the screen right now, Mr. Mayor. It's 55 unit residential development.
okay, what I need right now is just basically the report 28, official plan zoning amendments, residence company development, final recommendation be received.
Correct.
Done on that. So if I could have a motion received. Councilor Houston and Councilor Dowie. Now put up the other recommendation. This is confusing.
Mr. Mayor, if I could be of assistance. So the first matter
Yeah,
is.
I think as a director, you should read your the recommendations because I'm
Yeah.
I'll tell you, the way it's set up here, it's not very easy to follow through. And
Okay.
I don't want to make a mistake here.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for that. So the first matter of business coming from tonight's report is that the report from June 8th simply be received. The second action that we're requesting of council based on our recommendation is that the report newly tabled, put in front of council, I should say this evening, is report 32, which speaks that, and that PBS 2021-32 entitled Official Plan and Zoning Bylaw Amendments, Bride Victoria Development Corporation, 12433 Dillon Drive, former Victoria Public School, along with the former McCall Street right-of-way, proposed residential condominium development, revised development proposal in response to June 8, 2021 council motion and final recommendations be received. And further that a bylaw having the effect of amending the adopted new Tecumseh official plan by changing the land use designation for the 2.9 hectare, 5.66 acre parcel of land situated on the south side of Dillon Drive, approximately 40 meters east of its intersection with St. Pierre Street, 12433 Dillon Drive, and former McCall Street right-of-way from community facility to residential and recreational in order to facilitate the development of the lands for a 55-unit residential development consisting of 6 two-story townhouse dwellings totaling 23 units, 2 two-story stacked townhouse dwellings containing 16 units each, and a municipal park in keeping with PBS-2021-32 be adopted. And furthermore, that a bylaw having the effect of amending the Tecumseh zoning bylaw 1746 by 1, adding a new definition for a stacked townhouse dwelling, and 2, rezoning a 2.29 hectare parcel of land situated on the south side of Dillon Drive, approximately 40 meters east of its intersection with St. Pierre, 12433 Dillon, former McCall Street right-of-way, from Community Facility Zone CF and Residential Zone 1R1 to Holding Residential Zone 3H, R3-19, and Recreational Zone RE, in order to facilitate the development of the lands for a 55-unit residential development consisting of 6 two-story townhouse dwellings totaling 23 units, 2 two-story stacked townhouse dwellings containing 16 units each, and a municipal park in keeping with PBS 2021-32 be adopted.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right, I'll go back to members of council. You've heard the recommendation is before you. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councilor Houston. Support? Deputy Mayor Bichetti. Open it up for any questions or comments. Councilor Houston and Councilor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship. And through you, I'd like to thank, administration and, and the developer, right, for really coming, back to the table and, answering what council, put out last meeting. I think everybody has, done a good job at, collaborating and, coming together and really answering what council set out as a direction, last meeting. I was prepared to move, the proposal last meeting. Happy to move, this one forward, as the developer has come down from, the proposal that he put forward before. Happy to support this that we see here today. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Houston. Councilor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship. This remains challenging file. And I think that maybe that's the understatement of the night. Although we just did go through a very difficult file just a little while ago. I have a lot of thoughts on this one, but the first and foremost one is I appreciate that I found a lot of goodwill as part of this overall process just the last couple of weeks. I've had a lot of people in the neighborhood engage with me and indicate what their vision was. I'm not going to pretend that this meets it, but that there was credit given where credit was due by many. And I think credit is owing to the developer for voluntarily coming back. The developer had other options and chose not to use them. And not only, just echoing what Councillor Houston mentioned, achieved what was a very, very significant irritant. The 3-story building is now a 2-story building, which does a great deal for the compatibility and integration with the neighborhood. You aren't going to see this stick out anymore. And a corresponding decline in the total number of units, which goes a little bit of the way towards reducing the impact on the neighborhood and the receiving roadways and services that are there. Certainly, I think that there's a deep enthusiasm for something different than this on the site, something that is resembling the rest of the neighborhood. And ultimately, our decision tonight is based on what's been put in front of us. Is it lawful? Is it compliant? And is there technical backing for its acceptability? So last meeting, I felt very confident that with what I felt was the right thing. And tonight, I feel equally confident that there was significant concession here, and that on a principled basis, I will support this motion. I know I'm going to be disappointing many in the neighborhood. And you know, I recognize that, and I find this a very difficult place to be in. But this application is by the advice that we're given compliant. I'm not going to pretend that it's liked, and I don't think that necessarily this is what, you know, say if we had a magic ball, what we all would have put here. But that's not my understanding of our discretion as a council, that we are able to have that sort of flexibility to go down that road. And I think to support that, that's why there are tribunals, and we have the provincial policy statement, and we have a lot that we are obligated by legislation to follow. So in one sense, I want to, I guess, upfront apologize for letting a lot of people down. And this is not a decision I take lightly, but I believe that this is the best path of enduring success. If this were to be turned down, what we see in front of us is not even part of the discussion. We are destined to go back to the previous item for consideration. And the goodwill here is that, you know, if we can achieve this third story removal and the reduction of the 8 units, this is a meaningful attempt to try and meet some of the needs described by the neighborhood. And I believe that by taking this measure, we are doing our best and going as far as we possibly can to achieve something that's as compatible with the neighborhood's wishes as we possibly can. So on that, yeah, I will be supporting this. And I respect all of the feedback that's been given to me. I really did my utmost to listen and to understand and to engage with the neighbors. I hope that they understand where I'm coming from our equivalent discussions as to what considerations I was going to be making into my my considerations. So with all that, I want to say thank you all for engaging. I mean, it's great from a democratic perspective that I've received more feedback on this than I think anything else. And it's actually in some ways as difficult as it's been. It has brought me to have a greater awareness of, you know, the concerns of a neighborhood, what they look out for, and just having that interest in what government does and what government can do or can't do. And it really is the bread and butter of really an effort, a grassroots effort to try and achieve change. And so I see, you know, there's a certain amount of success here. And I want to give a lot of credit, you know, to certainly the residents for keeping myself on my toes and forcing me to definitely consider this properly. I give a lot of credit to the developer for having offered a concession to get to this point, and to the administration for working hard to do their best to implement what council had asked them to do. And certainly based on the motion from last time out, what council's intent has been achieved here. And so with that, I say I'll stop now. But I want to thank, you know, just I'm appreciative for the process, and thank everyone for their patience and their contributions to this. And I really hope that we achieve something for the greater good here, having gone through all of this. Thanks.
Okay, any further questions, comments? Councillor Altenhoff.
Thank you, Worship. And through you, I just want to indicate, you know, my sincere appreciation to really all the stakeholders involved here. You know, the residents have been very passionate, and I appreciate the input that they provided myself, the developer, Again, sincere appreciation and administration and really for everyone trying to work as hard as we can, to get this as firmly as we can to kind of what the end or, where we're at. I do appreciate all the compromises that have been made on all fronts. And again, that was a point that I was articulating a number of meetings ago. So thank you very much.
All right, any further questions or comments? Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. As many know, in the news, we always hear about the National Housing Strategy. And at the County of Essex, we had a recent delegation showing a huge need for diverse housing in our region. And, keeping our youth and our seniors in Tecumseh is important to me. The revised plan this evening before us has taken into account what Council asked at the last meeting. So I will support the motion as it is a fair compromise, not only for the neighborhood, but also to the property owner rights in this situation. So again, I want to thank administration and also to the residents there for working, in terms of advocating their issues and for us as council, I listened, but we need to make a decision this evening and with regard to this application. So those are my thoughts on the motion.
All right, thank you very much. Any, yes, Councillor Tonio.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Again, don't want to repeat everybody, but thanks everybody that's been involved in this process. I appreciate the developer listening to what we requested. In my opinion, it still has too much density. And I guess I should have voiced that on June 8th of what my number would be. And I'm thinking around 45 to 50 units in the area, I think would make more sense. So that's where I stand on this, where the density still needs to come down a little bit while we can still get some housing in our area and still accommodate the request of the residents. Thanks.
All right, any further questions or comments? I just want to weigh in. I want to thank council, all of council, obviously. In the years that I've been involved in municipal government, what we dealt with tonight, the two issues we dealt tonight is probably the two toughest ones. I mentioned that, I think, to administration today and in the 28 years. There's certainly, again, this is another one where I don't think there's perfection can be reached, but I must say it meets all of the requirements from the provincial policy to all of our official plans, and adds diversity in housing within our community. Developers come, they own property, they develop it. It's not a question of council saying, well, this is the type of development I want here. We can ask, and we do at times, but really they come with something in mind. I know there was a lot of comparisons to different subdivisions with even my own. That was not, it wasn't the mayor that said they wanted 48 townhouses there. It was Peter Valenti, the developer. Before that, on Poisson, it was David Rayon who came and decided this is what he wanted to build in the community. We can certainly make suggestions in that regards. I respect the passion of people. And I think there's been a lot, and I think it's a matter now of healing. And I know there are some residents that are going to be deeply disappointed, but in the same token, we need to look at the big picture. And I think what council did was last 2 weeks ago, again, push as hard as we could. And I think you alluded to that, Councilor Dowie. And we certainly want to take this opportunity to thank the developer who, took the time and said, wanted to work constructively with certainly the neighborhood in that regards, and then did reduce the amount, reduce the the third story. And here we are tonight, trying to move this project forward. I want to thank administration as well. This has been a very, very heavy file for them to carry. They've done it with the utmost professionalism to address, as they say, stroke the T's and dot the I's. And certainly, I think this project at the end, I think we will all come to realization that this has been a community driven in terms of what the end result's going to be, and something that I think the community will be proud of. And it's the diversity of housing has been on council's minds for a lot of years. For 30 years or 35 years, our big emphasis was on big single family homes, but things have changed, and people have gotten older, and the affordability piece, and I think that's the other thing that we have to be working on seriously is now also is build attainable homes. And for a lot of first-time buyers that are trying to enter the market, that's going to be compelling, and so forth. So we had an opportunity. I think Deputy Mayor, you alluded to it in terms of county. We spent about an hour and a half or 2 hours with our service manager in terms of housing with the city of Windsor, and just in the county alone, and the southern part of our county, there are 12,000 people that are waiting for affordable housing. That's not even touching the city, and that's the southern part of our county. So you can imagine, as we continue to try to put that into perspective, it's going to take a lot of work from all of us, and certainly our administration and political will, to bring that to fruition. So I support the motion this evening. I think it is a compromise, and I want to certainly thank council, administration, and the landowner, for really coming together and deliver on this project. So on the motion has been duly moved, duly supported. All in favor? Opposed, if any? The motion carries. Okay. Okay, we'll move on to Public Works. Environmental Services, we've dealt with that one. I think we're in bylaws, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the first bylaw we have on the agenda this evening is bylaw number 45, which is the official plan amendment in regards to the Verde Victoria Development Corporations, which was just deliberated on, as well as bylaw number 46, which is the related zoning bylaw amendment for those lands. We also have bylaw number 49, which is a bylaw to appoint the members to the Rural Broadband Advisory Committee, and bylaw number 50, which is the bylaw to regulate open air fires within the town of Tecumseh, as reported on earlier this evening at the Policies and Priorities Committee. And then lastly, we have bylaw 51, which authorizes the execution of the Fire Dispatch Services Agreement, as reported on earlier this evening by the chief. We're respectfully asking for first and second readings to these bylaws, and if appropriate, third and final.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. Two readings on the bylaws, Councillor Houston and Councillor Altenhoff. On the two readings, any questions or comments? Not all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Third readings in order. Councillor Houston, Deputy Mayor McKetty. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Unfinished business. Yes, Madam CEO.
Sorry, the bylaws for the planning matter? Are they included in that? 45 and 46?
I believe they were.
All right,
Yes.
thank you.
Unfinished business? See none. New business? Any new business? None to report. All right, we have a motion, and if I could have Councillor Outenhoff from our previous meeting. You're on mute.
Excuse me, I was just trying to navigate the various windows I have here. I'm sorry. Oh, okay, sorry, it's coming up there. Sorry, my eyesight's not as good as that. I've got to. Give me one moment. There you go. Okay, appreciate that. Yes, I bring forth the following motion. Whereas at the regular council meeting on June 8th, 2021, Tecumseh Town Council received a follow-up report from the April 13th, 2021 regular council meeting, when council moved to reconsider the earlier decision to opt out of retail cannabis in town. And whereas Tecumseh Town Council voted to opt in, allowing the retail cannabis stores to operate within the town of Tecumseh, understanding that the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario, AGCO, provides the final approval of all applications for cannabis retail stores. And whereas the province of Ontario's only restriction related to the location of retail cannabis stores under the Cannabis License Act is 150-meter distance between the store and any school, with no other allowances for the municipality to put other limits in place, such as additional buffer distances from other sensitive land uses. And whereas municipalities are permitted to put in place a policy to recommend further protections to vulnerable populations and sensitive land uses, now therefore be it hereby resolved that the town of Tecumseh Council requests that administration develop a policy as recommended by the Windsor Essex County Health Unit, and with the consultation of the Windsor Essex County Health Unit, to expand on the limited restrictions imposed by the province for the protection of our vulnerable population and sensitive land uses, such as daycares, parks and youth, and mental health centers, to further influence the location of retail cannabis stores. And that the proposed policy be provided to council for consideration of adoption at the next Policies and Priorities Committee meeting. Please.
All right. So that's duly moved. Do I have support on that motion? Councilor Tonio. Any further discussions? Councilor Dowie and Councilor Houston.
Thank you, Worship. I guess on a general basis, it seems like, hey, the health unit has some strong views on this, and I think that's it's certainly worth looking into. In some ways, I wonder, do we have constraints in our community that may be influenced by it? I can think of just where commercial areas are that retailers would set up shop. St. Antoine School comes to mind as being proximate to a commercial area, up the Lakeview Montessori, and I think a daycare center over off of Westlake. But at the end of the day, I'd like to have, I'd just like to have the discussion, because I don't want any, wouldn't want to have a policy where all of our commercial zones are off limits, because we did opt in, but we want to have these stores cited in the right spots. But we certainly don't want to go the other way, where it's, well, we have rules that no one can possibly follow either.
Okay, Councilor Houston.
I see Margaret, her hand up. I'll let her maybe respond to
I did not see your hand, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. And hopefully this might allay some of Councillor Dowie's concerns. Any policy that we would develop if pursuant to Councillor Altenhoff's motion would really be kind of a statement of values. We aren't able to bind the use from locating. That's made clear through the province that they're the only ones that can set rules that the store has to live by. I think the intent behind the policy framework here is to just kind of articulate the town's wishes with respect to the location of such facilities and provide that to any prospective retailer so that they're aware of council's values with this product and would take that into consideration as they choose their location in Tecumseh.
Yeah, I mean, the AGCO is the governing body. We have 15 days, for public input, certainly at that particular time, but at the end of the day, I think it's pretty narrow in terms of the scope and in terms of what we can do, but I totally agree with the CAO's comments. Yes, Councillor Altenhoff.
Thank you, Worship, and through you, I just want to acknowledge the CAO. I think she raised it very well. The intent of this motion was not to put such additional constraints on this system so that we can't have anyone setting up shop. That was never my intents. My intents are just as it's stated in the motion, is to best benefit ultimately the town of Tecumseh, recognizing that these facilities will be present. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, on the motion, yes, Councillor Gibson.
No, I did have a couple questions, but they were kind of clarified, right? Just what Mark had mentioned. So
it's kind of a motherhood and apple pie. I think it's
yeah, so I am
okay. I can surmise this, but anyway, if no further questions or comments, then it's been duly moved, supported. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Okay. Confirmatory bylaw. To confirm the proceedings this evening, Councillor Altenhoff, Councillor Tonio. All in favor? Opposed, it's carried. Any notices of motion? Yes, Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship. I'll need the assistance of administration in crafting my motion, but I'd like to let the council have council be aware. I'd like to bring forward a motion of the general nature of where mobile vending operations might be permitted or establishing a system of sorts. And the reason being, I know I received a number of complaints about one that came about. I think they had great intentions to satisfy a need, but we also need to have them placed in the right spot if we're going to have them. So I'd like to bring that forward for next meeting for a motion to consider that council set a direction and have the administration work on this file.
Good point, Councillor Dowie. I know I've been approached by a business within the community who wanted to have a mobile vending in the community. If we can have, I think it's proper. If we can have a fixed area and it's done, then administration can deal with it instead of phone calls to members of council. So I fully support this venture. Okay, so we'll have that on the books for our next meeting. Any other? Okay, hearing none. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, July 13th, 5:45 p.m. public council meeting, the Sear Drain, 6:15, the quarter revision, South Talbot Drain, and also the 7 p.m. regular council meeting. Before we adjourn too, is that with the upcoming AMO conference, I know it's virtual and so forth, we usually have, are we going to carry on 2 meetings per month through summer? Yes, Madam Clerk.
Your worship, there is 2 meetings scheduled in July and there is 1 meeting scheduled in August.
Okay, if we can coordinate that so it doesn't interfere with the AMO conference.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, nothing, okay, so we've got your timetable for your next meeting. If there's nothing further, adjournment's in order. Deputy Mayor Becchetti and Council Antonio, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Thank you very much, members of council. We've had 2 marathon meetings in the last 2 weeks, but I can attest that the timing was good, and I think the debate was good. The information has been shared, has been good. And with that, I certainly want to thank you for your indulgence and certainly administration. And with that, I certainly bid you adieu and stay safe and go Habs go.